So hey everybody, I don't know if anyone's familiar with John, but in case you are, he's an opinionated guy who's rather good at communication, and I found out he's also a pretty big fan of Game of Thrones in general, just like me. So I wanted to talk about some of the general consensus I see from the community, the theorists, some of the complaints people have against the show versus the book lately that I've been looking into as well. I know our own opinions on the show as well. So what do you think about the most recent season? And by the way, spoilers. So if you're not caught up, go away.
There's a chance, that if first of all, there's a chance that the books will never be completed. Because I think I read I read two sample chapters of what is it called, The Winds of Winter. I
think so, yeah.
About 4 years ago. And he's been promising every year to bring out the sixth book, and said, "Oh, it's just a matter of editing it."
Yeah.
And it's not appeared.
Okay.
So it's a matter of the books run out of material as far as the series went quite a while ago, and there's an incredible amount that's been merged that are ideas from books 4 and 5 that have then been ran with by these hack TV writers.
I've seen a lot of criticism of them. D&D. Is it?
Yeah, it's for those who are familiar with the material. Now, I've read the books, but I've also got the audio books. And I used to have on my iPod.
Nice.
And I used to walk around and listen to them on my iPod. And the audio books, for anyone who enjoys Game of Thrones, I recommend you go and get the audio books. They're expensive, but they're the guy who narrates them is a chap called Roy Dotrice, who was like a TV character actor in the 1970s and 80s, and actually appeared in an episode of Game of Thrones. He played the pyromancer.
Oh yeah.
In the Blackwater episode. That's Roy Dotrice. And in the books, he actually acts them out. He does everyone's voice in the book.
Wow.
So he's like one of the great storytellers. And it's like that George R.R. Martin gave him the job of narrating the audiobooks, understanding that this guy was like the king of Jackanory, the greatest storyteller that there is. So this guy's actually still alive.
Yeah.
He's in his 90s now, but he's likely very, very keen to continue the audiobooks, because the audiobooks of Game of Thrones are as big as the books.
Of course.
You'll find there's millions of people who've listened to the audiobooks of Game of Thrones. Now, I've listened to the audiobooks of all Game of Thrones probably about 3 or 4 times, and I've also read them.
Wow.
So it's a matter of the backstory is in itself incredibly vast, and if you've read the books, you knew who Jon Snow's parents were. If you were paying attention from the very start, practically, it's all foreshadowed. So it's a matter of now there's a situation where they've named Jon Snow, haven't they, as Aegon Targaryen, the 8th of his name.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, in the books, I mean, check this out, right? Have you read the books?
No, I haven't. I'm
right.
a show fag. all the show fags called the nerds book fags.
Right. Well, if you've been paying attention, you remember that Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, wanted to kill the Mountain. And he wanted to kill the Mountain for killing his sister, for raping and killing his sister, and also killing his nephew and his niece, who were the true-born children of Rhaegar Targaryen.
Oh, right.
Now, he killed the kids too, and in the books, the son lived.
Oh.
Varys went down to Flea Bottom and bought a horse baby for a shilling or whatever, for a golden dragon, and actually switched the babies around and rescued Rhaegar Targaryen's natural-born son. Now, if you get to book 5, of Game of Thrones. Do you know Mapatis? Illyrio Mapatis.
I think I remember vaguely a guy called Illyrio.
Right, Illyrio Mapatis is the guy who's in Series 1 of Game of Thrones, who's the guy who's given shelter to stupid Viserys and Daenerys.
Him, yeah.
He's the guy who arranged the wedding between Drogo and Daenerys.
I remember now.
That's Illyrio Mapatis. Now, Illyrio Mapatis in the books is not. He is aiding Daenerys Targaryen, but she's in essence a red herring.
Yeah.
He's really actually backing a play for the true-born son of Rhaegar Targaryen to take the Iron Throne.
Damn.
Rightfully take the Iron Throne. And you've got it where it's poised in the books, where the Golden Company keep getting a mention.
Yeah.
Recently, the Sellsaw Company, the Golden Company are going to invade Westeros. And in the next series, as it is on television, they'll be on the side of the Lannisters. In the books, the Golden Company have invaded Westeros, led by, I can't remember his name. I think he's actually called Aegon Targaryen. He's the son. Can't remember his name now.
Is that the guy?
No, the Blackfire Rebellion is something completely different. Yeah, that's where a king, a Targaryen king on his deathbed, he naturalized all his bastards as his final wish.
I think someone's talked about that. What a bastard.
Yeah. Well, he was dying, weren't he? He thought, I'll do something nice since I'm dying, not realising that the world goes on without you.
Yeah.
Let's think of Targaryens, right? Targaryens are generally wonderful people, but every now and then they're not. Mm-hmm. So over a 300-year dynasty, they've had, say, 4 out of 5 of them have been really great people. And then the 1 in 5 is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And this is what's led to all the trouble, but also it's what's led to all the drama that makes up what is the history of Westeros.
That's amazing, because none of this is in the show, and despite the fact I do enjoy the show, it just goes to show you that you can only pack so much into an hour an episode when there's 10 episodes, and they do. So in that regard, they've done a really good job.
I don't go with that, right? Because you can do a great deal in drama with what they call expositionary dialogue. Now, you notice how in Game of Thrones these days, it's as if they've invented the fucking teleporter.
Yes, the teleporter.
And they're able to instantly transport somebody from one side of the world to the other.
Sail the continent in a day, yeah.
Yeah. Send somebody running to the wall and say, you've got to get a raven to Daenerys. And he just have a bit of have like a Steve Austin $6 million man running at 60 mile an hour. Back to the wall, gets picked up, sends a raven. Ravens fly at about 30 mile an hour or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure the
Gets to Dragonstone, she jumps on a dragon and is up faster than a taxi could have turned up. So what they do in the books is there's the story of what is the history of Westeros is told to the reader while they're on the road to somewhere.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Right? So it's like if you were to look at the how that book works, it's like 2 characters on the road. They got up in the morning at dawn. This is what they had for breakfast, and they always make a case. George R.R. Martin always makes a case in every chapter of his books as to say what everybody ate for breakfast.
Yeah.
And that's actually a theme through it. You get it where there's a little scene in like series 3 of Game of Thrones where Tyrion says to Cersei, that was a lovely lamprey pie. You must have slaved all day. Now, lamprey pie is a Westerosi dish. That's like what rich people eat, like an eel pie, fish pie. But say, we know about lamprey pies. We know about eating swan. We know about blood sausage, like black pudding, things like that they generally eat. But lots of onions, lots of potatoes. The reader knows about this because there is always an aspect of it as to the general bedragglement of the characters or the situation they can find themselves in can then be foreshadowed in every chapter based on what they had to eat for breakfast. So for breakfast, he had a mug of ale and, 2 loaves and a couple of those little fishes and bacon burn black.
Yeah.
Which is one time when they said what Tyrion had for his breakfast. And then you'll get it, whereas there'll be a chapter in book 3, which book 3, what's it called? A Storm of Swords? No, it's not. What's book 3 called at Game of Thrones?
It's Game of Thrones.
Can't remember off the top of my head. A Clash of Kings, yeah, Storm of Swords. A Storm of Swords on its own as a novel, I think the best fictional novel I've ever read.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. And you'll have it where Arya and Gendry and Hot Pie are in the Riverlands lost. And what are they eating for breakfast? Had a breakfast of acorn paste. Mm-hmm. They're starving. So they're able to set the tone in every chapter as to what these characters ate for breakfast by way of the situation they found themselves in. Because starving to death is a massive thing in Game of Thrones. Now, you look at George R.R. Martin, he's a big, fat guy who's not, he's not a stranger to a fancy dinner. Yeah. And this being part of his motivation makes it a living part of what the motivation is of all the characters in it. Where, in many cases, you've got a lot of characters on the verge of starvation.
Yeah.
It's like you watch that TV show, right? And Daenerys kind of cons her way into owning the Unsullied.
Yeah.
And they all march out of Astapor. So, and I'm thinking, how's she going to feed them?
Damn, man. Yeah. Like, I think someone else mentioned this, that there's things you can do in the book that you can't necessarily do in the show. And things like that, little touches like that, really do go to show the difficulty in adapting it.
Yeah.
I think... As well, I saw, obviously, this has been a big point recently, that because they've overtaken and cut things from the books, that the show is gone in a direction where the book probably won't be anything like it.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my objections of changes that were made.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Right? Right, we'll start, and right. Series 1 of Game of Thrones is an almost true telling of the book. It's really good. Mm-hmm. As a television adaptation, as good as any ever done. Series 2 of Game of Thrones is similar in that regard, where it covers the main story, and then it kind of goes adrift in one place where they've made... I don't understand the error that's been made in the episode Blackwater. The Stannis Baratheon with his invasion of King's Landing. Because there's a key plot point as to why Tyrion Lannister is the hero of Blackwater that they skipped out of the books. And that is, you may have heard of this. Have you heard of the chain?
No.
Right. Well, I knew you wouldn't know, so you've given me the opportunity to tell the story. When Stannis' fleet were arriving, and they were in the shit, and it shows that very well in the show as to where they're massively outnumbered. If he's able to land that fleet at that one gate, they're all done for. And they know about the wildfire that's being started up. And Tyrion's plan is actually better than setting the Blackwater on fire. Mm. What he does is he orders every smith in King's Landing to work together to build a chain. And then this chain has got one tower on one side of the Blackwater and one side on the other. And the beauty of the plan was they were to wait until Stannis' fleet had passed a certain point and then pull the chain to trap them all and then set off the wildfire.
That's pretty good.
So if you notice, right, this is the thing. The guys who make the TV show hate the people who've read the books and treat them with disdain because it's like, you're spoiling it. You spoilers. There's a scene that's not really required that's in. When the Dornish are coming to King's Landing, and Tyrion and Bran waiting for this procession of Dornish knights, nobles. And Bronn says that the guy Pod is looking at the sigils and telling you which house is which.
Yeah.
And Bronn says, I wish I had a sigil. Now that's a big fuck you to the readers of the books, because Bronn has got a sigil. What's Bronn's sigil?
It's not the Blackwater, is it?
Yes, it's a chain above a field of green fire.
Damn.
Because he's Bronn of the Blackwater.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they didn't bother putting that in where Bronn's got a sigil. And then they put this bit of a line in where Bronn says, wish I had a sigil. Well, you have, but they decided not to write it in.
Yeah.
Another thing that's wasn't properly done either, and then they later went back and tried to change it, was the significance of the House Stark's Valyrian sword, ice.
Yeah.
The great big sword that Ned Stark uses to chop people's heads off, and was actually used to chop his head off, is a Valyrian sword that's been in existence since pretty much the dawn of time.
Wow. And
it's to all intents and purposes a weapon of mass destruction. A Valyrian two-handed greatsword, the most impressive sword in the world, is ice, and it's actually the symbol of House Stark's power.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the significance of ice was never even mentioned until later on, when in the story, Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper are made as new Lannister weapons from the greatsword, from the Stark sword. Because the Lannisters, as rich as they are, have only ever had one Valyrian sword in the family, and some guy lost it at sea. A guy who went away on an expedition to sea, never came back and took the sword with him. And for all the gold the Lannisters have got, because they control all the gold mines, yeah, the way that the story's written, Casterly Rock and the West Country is Cornwall.
Yeah.
Which historically was the great mining area of Britain. It's actually based on Britain, Westeros, and it's in its history. So they're the Cornish. They're the great miners. So they've got the gold mines. There's no amount of gold that Tywin Lannister could ever pay a house for it to sell its Valyrian legendary, named, historied weapon.
Yeah, it's more in the show, they've just got a cool as fuck sword that can kill White Walkers, but the historical significance in story, they did really gloss over in the show, yeah.
Now, do you know the most famous, this is never got mentioned, never been mentioned in the TV show, the most famous weapon in Westeros is called Dawn. And it's carried by whoever the top knight of House Dane is, and he's called whoever carries that sword is called the Sword of the Morning.
I read about this the other week, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Now Arthur Dane was the last man to carry Dawn, and he's the guy it showed in the show in that flashback of the Tower of Joy, who's that two-handed swordsman that is killed by Harlan Reed and Eddard Stark, where one stabs him in the back and the other takes his head off. That's Sir Arthur Dane of the King's Guard, who's regarded as the greatest swordsman in the history of Westeros.
The coolest swords.
Sir Arthur Dane.
They give him two normal swords.
He carries Dawn. Now, when he died, Ned Stark took the baby, Jon Snow, and the sword back to Starfall. It's called the House Dana at Starfall, and the legend of Dawn is that it was a meteorite that fell from space, meteorite, and they made the sword out of the minerals that they found in the middle of the meteor. Likely fucking uranium.
That's pretty badass.
And that sword actually glows like a lightsaber. But it's not in the show because since Arthur Dane died, there's not been a knight good enough to wield Dawn to take on the title of Sword of the Morning.
Have we even
So,
seen Star? Is it Starfall? The place is called.
yeah,
Have we seen
Starfall
that
never
in the
gets
show?
a mention.
It's never been mentioned.
No,
No.
never been mentioned. Never been mentioned. The House Dane, never been mentioned.
Yeah.
House, and they're massive. They're a famous house, like House Hightower, never been mentioned. You said the Citadel, where the Maesters live, the great big tower, where the school of the Maesters.
Yep.
That's Old Town. The Lords of Old Town are the High Towers. The High Towers are a massive house, but they're not. The Tyrells run that part of the world.
Right.
But the Tyrells are fucking nobody. The Tyrells were the stewards, actually the servants of, what were they called? The house gardener. Yeah, they were called, who had a high garden. That's why it's called High Garden. They're called House Gardener.
Yeah.
And they refused to surrender to Aegon Targaryen. So they died at what they call the Field of Fire, which was the first time dragons were used in open combat. And the Field of Fire incident is why the first King of the North, the first Stark King to kneel, he heard what happened at the Field of Fire and went, fuck this. We're not fighting those guys. Because it was like tens of thousands of men died in seconds to the dragons. So in some regards, the Targaryens, when they invaded, they only had to actually fight two enemies.
Yeah.
The big one, though, I mean, this is one that they don't talk about, the Ironborn.
Yeah.
They say a lot of big words, don't they? They say a lot, we do not sow, we Ironborn, we're born to raise and reap.
Yeah.
You know, to reap and slave. Talk about salt wives, they talk about thralls. Well, they're slavers. And the Ironborn used to control Westeros south of what they call Mort Cailin, which is a fortress that is absolutely deadly, that no one can attack from the south but can be approached from the north. It's like that's a story unto itself. There was a war between the First Men and the Children of the Forest, where the Children of the Forest did some spell shit.
Yeah.
And actually destroyed the land there to create this natural fortress, which was their fortress, but it's still there. It's called Mort Cailin. So it's like a king of the north can put 300 archers into Mort Cailin, and no army from the south will live to make it all the way north.
Shit, I had no idea about that.
It's an undefeatable fortress. When they ever mention Mort Cailin, it's like the Ironborn when they invaded in Series 3 or something, where Theon, makes a right fuck of everything. Yeah. They say they take Mort Cailin. The northern armies have marched south, so the Ironborn take Mort Cailin and trap them there. It's like, you ain't getting back.
Yeah.
We've closed the door behind you. But say, Mort Cailin, what were I talking about? Yeah, the Ironborn. The Ironborn used to control the Riverlands and, in essence, the entire Midlands. The Riverlands is wide open, and whenever there's a war in Westeros, the Riverlands burns because it's impossible to defend. It's got no natural defences. Once you've gone across the Twins into the Riverlands, you've got it where Riverrun is an untakeable fortress because it's like an island between two rivers. You can't do anything about it.
I'm looking at the map that I've got on my wall while you're telling me about all this. It's like you're taking me through.
You see, Harrenhal was Harren the Black's fortress, which was going to be his command centre to, in essence, take Westeros in the name of the Ironborn. And the Ironborn enslaved the entire population, man, woman, and child, of the Riverlands. And then over the period of about 30 or 40 years, started to build these great castle of Harrenhal, which was the biggest and the most impressive castle ever built. Like 12-foot thick walls and things like that. Towers that were 100 meters high and all this bullshit. And when that place was more or less completed, it was destroyed in about a minute and a half by Aegon Targaryen and his dragon. And that was the end of the Ironborn. And Harren and his sons died in the fire. And then the Targaryens, because that was the nature, they don't kill you off. Basically, they get rid of your bosses and put other people in charge. They lifted House Greyjoy then to be the House Paramount of the Iron Islands.
Oh, right. So
the Greyjoys were actually put into power by the Targaryens. And then they were the reason why the small folk love the Targaryens is because they ended the tyranny of Harren the Black.
Yeah.
It was in essence a Viking. He ran by the rules. They're the Vikings, the Ironborn.
Yeah, not the Irish or something.
See, yeah. They're the Irish of the Vikings to some degree.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But that's a genetic thing. But if you look at most of the major settlements in Ireland, they were all founded and named by the Vikings, like Cork and Dublin, places like that. They were all trading posts actually set up by the Vikings, who were raiders. They didn't come from a place that was particularly fertile, so they weren't the best farmers in the world, so they would reap. We do not sow. We're reapers.
Yeah.
So that's what the Ironborn are.
Yeah,
going on a segue of the Ironborn here, I might as well continue telling this and not have to go back to it. A hilarious part of what is the story in the books is Euron, the Crow's Eye, who's the character who's now the big player, who was able to magic a fleet from out of his arse. He's the guy who came back and killed. Yeah. We'll build 1,000 ships. We'll build I don't know what accent he's got. I don't know where he's supposed to come from. We'll build 1,000 ships. As the fleet sails away.
Yeah.
We'll build more ships, and then all of a sudden he's got a fleet of fucking Star Destroyers. It's like, really? Now, that guy is the brother of Balon Greyjoy, and Balon was chosen above him at a King's Moot to be the next Lord of the Iron Islands. And they've got another brother called Victorian, who gets absolutely no mention. It looks like Victorian and Euron have been merged into one character.
I see.
Yeah. And Euron, what's so fucking funny about him is he went into exile and started to raid the Summer Sea.
Yeah.
He was mentioned the Summer Isles, and they mentioned the Basilisk Isles.
Uh-huh.
The Basilisk Isles is their version of the Caribbean.
Right.
The Basilisk Isles are a kind of pirate stronghold, a pirate trading port, where they sell slaves and whatever they can steal. And you hear of Ebonese whalers and things like that. There's loads of different countries out in it that aren't the main continents of Essos and Westeros. But he went out plundering. And he's got this ship his flagship's called Silence. Mm-hmm. And it's called Silence because everybody who works on it is a eunuch who's had his tongue cut out.
Oh, that's fucking awful.
Right, but it's a fast ship and it's a quiet ship. So it's for sneaking up on people. They just no one says fuck all. Now, he returns in the book from exile at the King's Moot, where they call her Yara, but her real name's Osha. Yeah, in the book, she's called Osha, and she's not a fucking lesbian. Yeah. They had to make her a member of the LGBT master race to explain why she's so clever, didn't they? Yeah. But yeah, he returns at that King's Moot, and when he comes back, right, he's got a lot of wisdom and he knows a lot of shit. And he comes back with a plan to sail to Marine to go and capture the dragons. And also to take Daenerys, to force Daenerys to be his wife.
So he came in way earlier in the original story.
Yeah, quite a bit earlier, yeah. The way that it's poised with the Ironborn is the Ironborn in the books are about to... Marine is under siege in the books, and Daenerys has gone missing with her dragon, where she ends up in the hands of the Dothraki and all that crap. That's happened. And Marine is being currently held by Barristan Selmy and the Unsullied.
He's still alive.
And he's still alive. They killed him off because they didn't like the actor's attitude.
What?
Actually, yeah. They killed him off because they didn't like something he had to say. Because he says, "Hey, hang on a minute, I'm a big player in this." He'd read the books and he's like, "Hey, I'm playing this part really," and he plays the part well, Barristan.
Yeah, I thought he was good. But then it's like he's killed in an alley by some brigand.
Yeah, some fucking some brigand stabs him in the back and he's just dead.
Westeros.
Yeah. It was they just suddenly wrote him out, but he's absolutely crucial to the story. He's a featured character in the books. We get chapters of the books from the perspective of Barristan Selmy.
Shit, you never would have known.
And he's mint Barristan. He's like, he is an hard bastard. Yeah. He is as good as they say, and it's a matter of the books. There's actually a chapter towards the end of book 5 where everything that is said about him being one of the greatest swordsmen of all time is proven true.
Yeah.
Even at the age of about 65 or 66.
What happens?
He takes on do you know the guy who marries Daenerys?
Yeah.
Who turns out to be he's actually the leader of these Sons of the Harpy.
Yeah.
These terrorists in Marine. Yeah. Who were going about doing nighttime stabbings and killing people who speak out and all that shit. Well, he confronts him as being their leader. Are you the Harpy? He goes and confronts him. And he's the guy's bodyguard is like this 6'5" Dothraki muscle-bound monster who's a champion slave pit fighter.
Right.
So he's a gladiator. Yeah. And he's like 25-year-old, and Barristan's like 65.
Yeah.
And it's like this guy sets his bodyguard on him, and Barristan's like, "Well, this will be fun. I'm looking forward to this." And it's like, as soon as the swords clash, Barristan Selmy's 21 again.
Yeah. Wow.
He's like, I don't really like this having to be in control of a city very much, but as soon as steel, he's like, "Come on." Rinses him all over the place. And it's like, just before he gets him, it's like, "And you are a dead man, sir." Rinses him out. And it's like, in reading that and listening to it as to where it's like, oh, this is it. This is what I live for. This is the song of the swords. I'm like, this has got to be in a TV show. This would be brilliant to watch. It's not in it, is it? He's dead. They killed him off because they didn't like his attitude.
Damn, man.
But say, talking about back to the that was a digression on a digression on a digression. The Ironborn, right? Do you remember them fuckers in? Sorry, bad language. Do you remember those fuckers in Car?
Yeah.
Them warlocks who imprisoned Daenerys and the dragons.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, when Daenerys escaped, they took to the sea to pursue her.
Right.
And who did they run across at the sea?
Oh, was it Euron, the bastard?
Euron, yeah, right. Cool. So he tortures them into telling him everything, and takes all the stuff, and as well as that stuff they drink, that nightshade, that blue stuff.
Yeah.
They call it something of nightshade, essence of nightshade they drink. He starts swigging it. So he starts giving him all these big ideas because it's pretty much it's knockout juice, isn't it? Yeah. It's some kind of, it's like ecstasy or something like that. It's like LSD in a bottle.
Yeah.
And he starts supping it, and then he's captured these guys, and they've got all this fancy dragon stuff. Like they've got a horn that the dragons will come to.
What, really?
And they've got they've got technology that they looted from old Valyria, which was about. I mean, they used to be able to get dragons to do anything. The Valyrians. That's why they got all them Valyrian steel swords. They could get a dragon to happily sit there and forge weapons for them. They were like the Flintstones era. They used to be able to get dragons to do anything they wanted to with the spells, as they say. Yeah. The spells, the words they taught the dragons when they were young, the spells, and also certain things they had like horns, bells. They used to be able to get the dragons to, in essence, dance for him if they wanted to. And he got all this stuff off them warlocks. So he tortured them, got all the information out of them, and then threw the fuckers over the side, give them to the Drown God. That's how they do it. throw the fuckers overboard. There you go, Drown God. There's your sacrifice. What do you think of that? Yeah. And then he heads back to the Iron Islands and says to the Ironborn, don't let her be the leader. Let me be the leader because I've got this fucking plan. And then he gets out the dragon horn and gets one of his guys to blow it. And he blows it, makes this whoa, and then for some magical reason, the dragon horn then sets the guy who blew the horn on fire, and it crumbles into ash.
Fuck! Wow.
So in itself, it's a pretty good magic trick. You know, it's a pretty good show.
Sounds like an amazing series of chapters. Like
it's miles better because then he orders. He doesn't go back himself. He orders his brother Victarion to go and take Marine. And at that stage, also in the story, Tyrion is actually a slave. When Tyrion gets up there, see, this is another thing they fucked up, right? Which would have been fun. You remember Joffrey's wedding?
Yeah.
Right, they have Sigur Rós on, don't they? That fucking band, that Sigur Rós.
Yeah.
And they get through 2 bands of Rains Castamere, and he just throws that handful of gold at them and just fuck off. Yeah. Go on, off you go. He pays them off. Do one. Well, after then, there's a show with all these dwarfs who do a reenactment of the War of the Five Kings dwarfs, isn't it? There's a dwarf show on, which is about mocking Tyrion. Well, in the books, that's 2 dwarfs, two knights, one on a dog and one on a pig, that joust each other.
Right.
So there's only 2 dwarfs, and it's this dwarf jousting, and it's hilariously funny, but as they say, it gets old fast.
Yeah.
It's not a great act, but the notion of it in the first instance is pretty funny. And this pair of dwarfs was a boy dwarf and a girl dwarf who were brother and sister, and the girl's called Penny.
Yeah.
And then, actually, do well here to continue the story where the Tyrion story is so much better in the books as well. And this is a sin that the TV people have done, a real sin. Tyrion kills Tywin.
Yeah.
Right? In the books, he doesn't kill him for what he kills him in the TV series, but the TV series went to great lengths to foreshadow the reason why Tyrion would kill his father. And it's to do with a lady called Tysha, who's mentioned in series 1, who was an orphan wheelwright's daughter or something like that. And she's being raped by 2 guys, or being chased. And Jaime and Tyrion stumble across her. Jaime chases away the rapers, and he takes her to a tavern, and they have a couple of flagons of wine and a couple of and 3 chickens. You don't remember this story? He tells it to Bronn.
I do remember it, yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, the next day, you know, a drunken scepter and a few gold coins, and we were man and wife. He marries a crofter's daughter, or a wheelwright's daughter, and they stay married for 2 weeks in hiding, and then Tywin found out about it, and then Jaime came along and told him the truth, as to say, well, she wasn't really an orphan. She was actually a whore, and I thought it was about time you had your first woman. So it was a setup, right? And then Tywin gave her to his guard garrison, and she got like gang raped by them all. And then after she'd been gang raped, he forced Tyrion to screw her as well.
What the fuck?
Right? And if you remember, Bronn in the show said, he said, I'd have killed the man who did that to me.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when Jaime Lannister loses his hand, he starts to reflect on the oaths he'd broken. And he started to be, then instantly, they didn't really do a very good job of this either. To spite the world, he became the world's most honest and honourable man. So when he let Tyrion go after the Mountain and the Red Vipers battle had happened, he came to Tyrion in the Black Cells, missing a hand. And it's like, oh, they've made a cripple of you. You know, they have a laugh. And he says, I owe you one, Tyrion. I've got to let you go. I've got to give you a chance because I owe you. And it's like, well, what do you owe me? He's like, remember that girl who you got married to? He says, father told me to lie to you. She wasn't the whore after all. She was just an orphan crofter's daughter.
Oh, fuck.
So then Tyrion went and killed his father.
That makes way more sense.
It does. And they got questioned about it, the writers of the show, and you know what the fuckers said? The contemptuous bastards, you know what they said? They didn't trust the audience to be smart enough to remember. It's like, you've got so much contempt for the people who watch your show. It's like writing, in its essence, the better it is, the more it engages you to use your imagination, so you as the viewer or the reader become part of the story.
Of course.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, we read the books and it's from all the chapters are all from different characters' perspectives,
Which is genius. Yeah.
So the only person in the world who knows everything that's going on all at the same time is the reader. You're the god of Westeros as the reader. You're the only one who knows all what's going on. You know, they've got ravens, but you're there. You're looking at it through different characters' eyes, and they didn't trust the audience enough to actually tell the proper story. And it's like, really?
My God.
You know, I found that so disappointing, because that's one of the great twists in the tale, as where it's a matter of you don't know where this story is going. Well, I tell you what, if you think you've heard a dark story, that story you heard all them series or books ago, that was like, that's creepy. Well, it's not. It's far creepier than you think.
I mean,
so he rightfully killed his father.
Yeah, like the way they did it in the show was just, his father was in bed with Shay and that whole thing, and I was like,
well, that happens as well, right?
Yeah.
And as well as that, the one of the funniest scenes in that book is the Tyrion Lannister trial, where Shay turns on him completely and just totally betrays him in that courtroom. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like, she was never a whore, you see. She doesn't own up to being a whore, and he kidnapped her, and she was betrothed to some young knight. And he got his thug to kidnap me, and then he transferred him into the Vanguard, and then the next morning he was killed in the battle.
Jesus.
So she like name drops some guy who was dead to say I was his betrothed.
Oh man,
oh yeah, she's that Shay turned out to be a proper lying, backstabbing bitch.
Never understood why she did that.
Because she'd been paid more money.
Oh right.
Her father got to her. Tywin got to her and paid her more than him. So she was willing. She was willing to do anything to get paid.
Yeah.
And he was his relationship to her. He was kidding himself through and through all along, Tyrion, as to this. Oh, I love you. She was a whore. In the first instance, he picked her up, paying her, saying, "Oh, I'll give you money beyond more than what you could ever spend."
Yeah.
And then he thinks that she loves him.
She never did.
So Tyrion's actually the smartest man in the world, but in that regard, he's the most foolish.
I mean, Peter Dinklage. I think he gave an incredible performance in the court scene. It was still really good, but it could have been even better if they'd have followed the book.
Yeah, it would have been funnier.
Yeah.
It's because it's break your ass funny. And then he made me call him my little lion of Lannister. Oh, it's like, have you crying laughing at the actual court scene as to how he gets stitched and set up.
Oh, fuck it.
It's so funny. And they blew it.
Yeah.
They blew it. They watered it down and turned it now into... Tyrion could be seen as being, his reasons for killing his father are ambiguous now, because he could have just escaped. He didn't have to kill him.
Oh, no.
He didn't have any reason. The reason for the beef, Shay was a whore. Shay had just betrayed him.
Yeah.
And that's not really a big deal. He could have just got on a ship and gone to Volantis, like he did. But no. In the books, because Jaime had just let him go and put a bee in his bonnet, Jaime signed his father's death warrant.
Yeah, Jaime's one of the most relatable characters in the show. Certainly, I totally get why people who read the books then even more pissed off than I already knew with the show.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's not that the show's dreadful, in my opinion. I still really enjoy it, but I can totally see why you'd just be confused and disappointed in some ways, despite the spectacle of Game of Thrones, the show.
It's a cop out because it bows to the will of its critics.
Yeah.
So it's a cop out. So you've got it where there's elements of the TV show that are there simply designed to shock, right?
Yeah.
But the story as told in the books is not as shocking, but it's a lot darker and in its own way much funnier because it's dark. And in that, it's got a sense of reality, a realism to it. Whereas, I mean, this was exploitative what they did. There's an element of the show where Arya has escaped, but the Lannisters never admitted to it.
All right.
So they took the handmaiden, who's mentioned in the show, Jane Poole. She's the handmaiden of Sansa, and they dye her hair black, and they put a wolf's cloak on her, and in essence say, right, now you're Arya Stark. And she gets married off to Ramsay Bolton.
Wait, it's not even Sansa in the. I heard
it's
about
not
that.
even Sansa.
So with Euron, like he sounds way more interesting from what you've said. In the show, he shows up and he's cool, and you can tell he's a bad guy. But in the show, it's very much, oh, Ramsay's dead. Now we need a worse guy. Who's just a psycho.
Well, no, Ramsay's not dead yet in the books.
I mean, in the show,
that just to make it clear to anyone who's interested, the books, the last act of Jon Snow is that he's just been stabbed dead by his brothers, and as the story ends, what happens is something called the Bastard Letter. It's famous in the amongst the people who are fans of the books and the story. There's something called the Bastard Letter, and it's when Ramsay Bolton sends a raven to Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Yeah. And he, in essence, gets Jon Snow killed. It's like this is a lesson that the world needs to know about the power of a text message. Right? Yeah, I'll find it. I've got a book here with it probably in, but I'll see if I can find the. I'll find something from the book.
Sure, man.
So we put Google Ramsay Snow or Bolton. He's Ramsay Snow at the time. Bastard Letter. Okay, the Bastard Letter. Wiki of Ice and Fire. We check this for a text message to send someone. Right, what's happened in the story is these, because Mance Rayder is not dead in the books.
Yeah.
They just burned him for nothing in the TV show because they wanted to cut down the number of characters. He's not dead. They burnt Rattleshirt to death and said it was Mance Rayder. And Melisandre, not Melisandre, what's she called? The Fire Priestess. Melisandre's, oh yeah, it is Melisandre. I'm thinking of Missandei.
Yeah.
Fucking names. Melisandre did a spell to switch Mance Rayder for Rattleshirt. So he's going around pretending to be the Lord of Bones, but he's actually Mance Rayder. Mance is still alive. Now, Mance was sent to Winterfell for the fake Arya, the fakes Arya and Ramsay Snow's wedding.
Yeah.
And he turns up, and that's the thing about Mance Rayder. Mance Rayder is a brilliant character who's actually a travelling minstrel who spends most of his time south of the Wall touring Westeros.
What?
So he was actually at Winterfell when the king visited.
Oh shit.
He's seen the king. He's seen the Kingslayer. He's seen the Hound. He's seen the king. He knows about everything because he was there. And now he was sent south with a group of what they call spear wives that are wildly fighting women who are all whores.
Right.
This seductress murdering whores. They sent him down and half a dozen spear wives as like dancers, and him as a minstrel, to go and entertain at this wedding because there's not so many musicians who've who was still in the north since the war's been kicked off. So it's like he turns up there and it's like, well, I brought my little guitar with me. I'm a singer, and Mance Rayder's a really good singer.
Wow.
No, he's brilliant. He knows all the songs and he writes songs.
You wouldn't know any
So
of
it's
that
like
on the show. Shit.
Yeah, it's like amongst wildlings, if they do something brave, it's a matter of you do this, and Mance will write a song about you. That's the secret of Mance Rayder's power, is that of the songs he writes and the music he plays.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, Mance is brilliant.
Wow.
He's a brilliant character. It's like, why have you just killed Mance Rayder? If you've been reading the books, by then you're thinking, hey, this Mance Rayder's a good lad.
Yeah.
It's like, this guy, he's the guy we need here. This guy's great. So he gets captured when Theon escapes with, they basically help him escape with Jane Poole. And then this letter's then sent, right? This is the letter from Ramsay Snow to Jon Snow. And it goes like this. Your false king is dead, bastard. He and all his horse were smashed in 7 days of battle. I have his magic sword. Tell his red whore. Now that's about Stannis. That's about the battle between Stannis and the Bolton forces that ends up in Stannis' defeat in the TV show, but it hasn't yet taken place in the books. The thing is, the map never get mentioned. They're part of Ramsay Snow's army, but they're just waiting for a signal to turn on them. It's a trap. Stannis is actually the battle of the battle in the snow. Stannis is actually poised to win that because the Mallisters are going to stab the Boltons in the back.
Oh yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, Stannis is very much alive in the books, and the show completely shanked him. Like,
yeah, what they had him do when he burned his daughter was absolutely and completely out of character for Stannis Baratheon. Yeah. Stannis is a hero.
Yeah.
Stannis is a hero in every way, shape, or form. But just to finish the letter, I have his magic sword, right? Stannis has got a sword called Lightbringer, which is the original sword of Azor Ahai. Azor Ahai is also known as the Prince Who Was Promised. He's the sort of mythical, magical warrior who will come and emerge to fight the White Walkers. Mm-hmm. He's Jon Snow. Yeah. Azor Ahai is Jon Snow, as we know, but his sword is Lightbringer. And what makes Lightbringer a magical sword is that he made about 20 attempts to make this sword, and he couldn't find anything to temper the steel when it was hot to make it cool. And he eventually tempered the steel with the heart of his wife. Ooh. He killed his wife with his sword to make it magical. Wow. It's like, wow, this is a creepy story. But yeah, it's a lightsaber. It glows in the dark. Lightbringer. Yeah, it's a lightsaber. And say I'll read it again. Your false king is dead, meaning Stannis, and this is a lie. Bastard. He and all of his horse were smashed in 7 days of battle. I have his magic sword. Tell his red whore. Your false king's friends are dead. Their heads upon the walls of Winterfell. Come see them, bastard. Your king lied, and so did you. You told the world you burned the king beyond the wall. Instead, you sent him to Winterfell to steal my bride from me. I will have my bride back. If you want Mance Rayder back, come and get him. I have him in a cage for all the north to see. Proof of your lies. The cage is cold, but I have made him a warm cloak from the skins of the 6 whores who came with him to Winterfell. I want my bride back. I want the false king's queen. I want his daughter and his red witch. I want this wildling princess. I want his little prince, that's Mance Rayder's son and sister. The wildling babe. I want my reek. That's Theon's escaped. He wants Reek back. I want my Reek. Send them to me, bastard, and I will not trouble you or your black crows. Keep them from me, and I will cut your bastard's heart out and eat it. Love, Ramsay Snow, true-born Lord of Winterfell.
Fucking hell.
Right, so he sends that letter to Jon Snow, and Jon Snow goes and finds Tormund, Giantsbane. Mm-hmm. And he looks at this, he's illiterate, and he says, So you got all that writing from those marks on that paper? And John's like, yeah. He's like, I wish I could do that, and I wish I had some of them ravens. I'd send a raven to every High Lord in Westrons telling them that I had the biggest cock in the world. Yeah. Tom and Giant Spain is one of the funniest characters ever written because he's the world's biggest liar. He tells all these stories that are just absolute made-up bullshit and could never be true, but they're so funny that people actually tolerate his bullshit. And he's always going on about how big his cock is. That's all he really talks about. That's what I'm most famous for. I've got the biggest cock north of the wall. And he even claims to have the biggest cock, even though a bear bit half of it off.
And
it's like,
wrote a song about
it. Guy's hilarious. Oh, yeah, likely there's songs about the Giant's Bane. But he tells a story of, one of his stories is great. It's like a right cold night one night, and I dug myself in an hole in ground, and I was thinking, I wouldn't mind having a go at that tavern wench with big tits. He's like, that'll keep me warm. He said, I had a couple of bottles of like fermented goat's milk. He says, I was fair pissed. And then he's like, so I went out in the snow and I went around looking for her, and I went in a cave and I said, I found her, and it's like, he says, at first she fought me a bit, but eventually, he says, the claws are a bit sharp, but eventually, he says, yeah, she looked after me proper. He says, it was great. He says, all right. He said, we had a right good fuck. He says, and I woke up in the morning, she was gone. And he says, and the next thing I knew, he says, I went out and about, and there was this bald bear.
What?
He basically telling that he went looking for a woman that he fancied, and ended up, in essence, crawling into a bear pit and raping a bear. And it's like, you bit half my cock off, and I've still got the biggest cock behind the wall. It's like the guy's stories were fucking hilarious, but you only get a small aspect of him. But yeah, he questions the letter because he's illiterate. He's like, do you mean that anyone can just write whatever? Because he's the world's biggest liar. It's like, so anyone can just write anything on one of these scrolls and then just put it on a bird's leg and send it, and people believe it? He was actually bang on. That letter's lies. There's nothing in it that's true apart from that Mance has been captured.
Shit, yeah.
But then Jon Snow, he then gets together with Tom and he says, are you going to let him kill Mance? Are you going to let this prick kill Mance? He says, no. He says, go and round up the wildlings. We're going. So Jon Snow calls all the wildlings and the Night's Watch, reads out that letter and says, right, I suggest something. We're going to go to Winterfell and we're going to take Mance back. And we're going to sort out this bastard and we're going to rescue my sister. And the wildlings think it's the best thing in the world. And they're like, yeah, Jon Snow, Jon Snow, Jon Snow. And then his black brothers all stab him in the back.
That makes more sense.
Because he broke his vows. He was guilty as sin of what they executed him for. It weren't something to do with some bitter kid and some people who had grudges against him because they wanted to be Lord Commander. It had nothing to do with that. He broke his vows fair and square by wanting to get involved in a war in the south, and that's against the vows of the Night's Watch. So it's like Jon Snow in the books is on the floor dead with 100 knife wounds, bleeding out into the snow. But it's also foreshadowed that he ain't going to be dead for very long because Beric Dondarrion's been brought back to life 10 times or something. And also Melisandre the witch, she keeps looking in the fires asking the Lord of Light for news of her king, and all she sees is snow.
Oh, right.
That's it. All I see is Jon Snow. I ask for news of my king and all I see is Jon Snow. It's all, see, Jon Snow's parentage. I understood it about 5 years ago. I'm like, yeah, well, that's Azor Ahai, that prince who was promised, it's Jon Snow.
Yeah.
And it'd be, the clues are all there because the flashback of the Tower of Joy that is in Series 6 of Game of Thrones, in the books, it's in Book 1. It's a dream that Eddard Stark had in Book 1.
Shit.
And it even logs the last words of Arianna Stark as Don't tell him, Ned.
Fuck.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So it's like, what do we know? What is this about? What's this story about? And it doesn't talk of the baby, but it talks of the bloody sheet. So if you're thinking about it, it's like, well, she's been like viciously ravaged, raped off this Rhaegar Targaryen guy. And that's kind of the story of the narrative of Robert's Rebellion, that she's been dragged away and viciously raped and held in a tower. But that's not what's really happened. So it's like Robert's Rebellion is a lie. That's now been properly established, hasn't it, by the television show? Right. Well, it's not the case, and it never was the case. And if you could see through that story, the story's made sense for a lot longer than you might think. And the true story that's being told by A Song of Ice and Fire is the story of Rhaegar Targaryen and Aryanna Stark.
Right.
And that's the story that's told in pieces. That's the big story.
That makes Ned way more complicated, actually, because he knew this war kicked off and everything, and he still didn't tell the truth to Robert.
No, he didn't go and rescue his sister and find out the truth until the rebellion was over and Rhaegar was dead.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Rhaegar was killed by Robert Baratheon with the Warhammer on the Trident and thrown into the river, dead. Yeah. And the battle wasn't particularly going Robert's way, but once he killed Rhaegar, it was over because everyone stopped fighting. Because they killed the king, they killed the guy who was going to be the next great king of Westeros. Rhaegar Targaryen was a great man.
Oh yeah.
He was a brilliant man. He was a great man. His father was the Mad King. And there's also something foreshadowed that's been mentioned, which is the tournament at Harrenhal at which Rhaegar ran away with Arianne. Now, that story gets told from about 5 or 6 different angles in the books, but it was the day that Jaime Lannister was anointed into the King's Guard as well. And there was a tournament being put on by Rhaegar at Harrenhal, where he'd got all the great knights and lords of Westeros together, and then his father turned up unannounced because he'd not left the Red Keep since he'd been kidnapped by House Holland, which is another story altogether, where he was rescued by Barristan Selmy, who was the infiltrated one man into the castle, but he killed 500 men and rescued the king. That's Barristan Selmy. That's why he's famous. He's like pulled off some of the great. He's like Big Boss. He's like Snake out of Metal Gear. He just killed everyone. But it was the first public appearance he made in years, and he just turned up from nowhere. And it's like he hijacked something else that Rhaegar had in store. And as it manifests, as the story developed, Rhaegar knew what was going on with the White Walkers. He knew what was going on with the legends. And he knew what he had to do. He knew that he was the prince. He was the prince that was promised, where he was a quiet man who used to sing and write songs and poems and entertain people, and was seen as like a very intelligent, very bookish, very articulate, really nice man who one day decided that he must now become a warrior.
Right.
And became a warrior and actually won that tournament.
Wow.
He won that tournament. He won a tournament as a guy who's recently taken up arms because he understood his role. These Targaryens are half mad because of the history and the dragons and the story of Aegon's conquest and all this kind of crap, because that's their history. And it's like fairy tales. It's an oral history. So they have got their own legends. But also the other house that have got their own storied legend that people laugh at are the Starks. The Starks, the First Men, the war against the White Walkers and the Spiders, and the building of the wall, and Brandon the Builder, and the magical spells in the wall, and the raising of Winterfell, and all this lot. That's the history. And he, at some stage, has gotten to speak to Arianne, and they've exchanged legends.
Wow.
Which is A Song of Ice and Fire.
Shit, dude. What fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
So a song of Ice and Fire is the story of Jon Snow, but it's also the story of Aryanna Stark and Aegon Targaryen.
The legends of their
and
family,
the way the way that the legends of their families must combine in order to fight the great evil.
Everyone thinks it's Jon and Daenerys, and I just want to say, in the show, I fucking hate Daenerys. She's such a Mary Sue, and she's
not. No. She's the character that she is. Right. She is someone who started the tale as a little girl who wants to go home. Who's an orphan.
Yeah.
And necessity has forced her to become someone. And that necessity of becoming someone, I mean, she's not a Mary Sue, the necessity of the situation. And as well as that, she's also the storied legend.
Right.
She's the storm bomb. It's like when her family was dead, her mother escaped when her family were being butchered in King's Landing, and her mother died in childbirth, bringing her on the night of the worst storm that had ever been remembered or recorded in the history of Westeros. Now, the Stormlands, you know, the Stormlands, you've heard of that notion? That's where the Baratheons come from, Storm's End. Yeah. Storm's End is a castle that can withstand storms because the gods of the sea kept destroying every Baratheon castle until they built Storm's End. Storm's End was built with the assistance of the Stark, Brandon the Builder.
Right.
And that's why it still stands. But that side of Westeros is like hit with tornadoes and hurricanes. And everything, when a big one comes along, everything's destroyed apart from Storm's End.
Damn.
So it's like when the storms start coming in, all the local people, they all go to Storm's End and they live.
Oh, yeah.
Because the walls at Storm's End, it's a round castle.
We've never seen it in the show.
It's round.
Have we? No.
No, it's round. And you know, it's been in it, but they fucked it up. Storm's End is in it. If you check out the scene between Stannis and Davos, when it's like, oh, I need you to be a smuggler again. I need you to take the Red Witch.
Yeah.
He's taking her beneath Storm's End because he knows how to get in, because he was the guy who broke the siege of Storm's End, which is what makes him the Onion Knight, where he lost his fingers.
Oh.
He was knighted and punished because he was the guy who broke the siege of Storm's End and saved them all, right? So he has to do the same trick again, getting in through the same channel and same underground tunnel as to how he broke the siege in the first place to get Melisandre in. And then in the next fucking scene that follows that, you've got Renly getting stabbed in the back in a fucking tent. So it's like, why did you go to all the trouble to take Melisandre under Storm's End in order to kill Renly in a fucking tent? So it's a massive, massive continuity problem. They fucked up the story. They shot it in a certain way as to where, well, hang on a minute. That doesn't fall at all, but the story requires it because it's not about killing. In the story, getting under Storm's End is not about killing Renly. It's about killing a guy called, what were he called? Pembury or something he was called. He was the Castellan, as they say. The guy who was left in charge of Storm's End while Renly was away.
Oh.
And Stannis demanded of this guy that he hand over the castle, but he also handed over a boy called Edric Storm. Edric Storm is a bastard son of Robert Baratheon, but's not mentioned. His story has been merged with fucking Gendry.
Gendry's all right.
But that bit where he gets kidnapped and has leeches put on him.
Yeah.
So they can get his blood, so they can do this. Ned Stark. Rob Stark, to burn this blood in the fire.
Yeah.
That's about Edric Storm. And the boy who Davos saves and puts out to sea and says, like, sail that way, you'll be right. That's Edric Storm as well.
Oh, shit.
Now, Stannis wants Edric Storm and he wants Storm's End. And that Pembury, who's the Castellan, he's like, stick your fucking head up your ass, you boring fucking bastard. Fuck you, you Red Witch, and you fucking smuggler, mate. Or if you want, me and you now can have one-on-one combat, and we'll settle it now. runs this castle. How about me and you fight over it? Oh, you don't want to fight me? Well, I'll tell you what it is, Stannis. Fuck off. So he just humiliates him in front of all his men and tells him to fuck off. And then that ghost is smuggled under Storm's End to kill him. He throws him out of a tower.
Yeah, that came from out of nowhere in the show. I was like, is this just to show Melisandre's fucking weird? Like,
why is he smuggling her under Storm's End to be able to kill Renly in a fucking tent? Now, you could have got in that tent with a pair of scissors.
Yeah. I gotta say, I thought about this the other day. That shadow baby with the knife thing, couldn't he just send that after the Night King?
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? We're saying that this notion of the notion of the Night King and all that sort of stuff from north of the Wall isn't so well foreshadowed in the books, so they've almost got free reign to do whatever they like with that side of the story.
I see, yeah.
Because as familiar as I am with the story, I've got no fucking idea what happens at the end. Although I've made predictions such as Jaime Lannister taking the Black. That's been foreshadowed.
Yeah.
In series 1, like episode 2, where Jon Snow meets Jaime Lannister, and he says, anyway, thanks for that. You protecting the kingdoms, joining such an elite force. And then he shakes his hand and says, hey, and, it's only for life. And then he walks away and he's got a white cloak on. Well, what's that? That's a glow for life as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's foreshadowed. That's foreshadowing that one day he would take the Black. Because what's the difference between taking the Black and taking the white?
There's very little.
Because that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take the white cloak. You take the white cloak, and you take the black. Them are the two different sides of it. Yeah. One's the greatest, purest knight to become the King's Guard guy, and the one's the Black Heart Crow, who gets reborn into the Night's Watch with all his crimes forgiven. Mm-hmm. So they're in essence mirrors of the same order. So that's foreshadowed that Jaime Lannister would join the Night's Watch and become Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to happen. You see in the last few scenes of the TV show where Jaime's on his way north on his own. Yeah. He's going to take the Black.
I'm so glad he finally basically told Cersei to go fuck herself. Like,
yeah, well, that always had to happen. Cersei. They've watered her down for the TV show. Yeah. She isn't. They've watered her down for the TV show. She's far worse in the book. She's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And so funny. It's like she gets Qyburn take over, doesn't she? And she makes him hand, and he then gets sort of free reign to do whatever he likes, and he brings the mountain back from the dead, and stuff like that. Brings the mountain back from the dead, and even he uses his head's missing. The mountain's head's missing, and so go back to something I was talking about earlier. We'll do what's it?
Yeah.
We'll go around like a storyteller. I mentioned that there was a couple of dwarfs that did a show at Joffrey's wedding.
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
mentioned earlier, right? Well, when Tyrion escapes, Cersei puts a price on his head. She said she'd give a lordship to anyone who could bring his head. Mm. So when them two dwarfs disappeared back to Essos, they went to Volantis. Some fucking idiot chops his head off. the actual, the guy from the act.
Yeah.
The mama from the act, the actor. Someone chops his head off and brings it to Cersei, trying to claim the fucking. Trying to claim the reward.
Yeah.
And she looks at it and he says, that's not him. And Qyburn's like, can I have that head? Why do you want it? No, I think it'd come in handy. That becomes the mountain's head.
Oh shit.
And the mountain's been rebuilt out of spare parts of people.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because Cersei, she starts to see Qyburn as being a good way of getting rid of people that are a pain in the arse. She gives them to Qyburn. And she gives people to Qyburn that she then later needs. and says, "Is there a chance I can have him back?" He says, "Well, yes, but he's unable to feed himself anymore, and he can't speak." What? Well, yeah, I've had to make some alterations. So she started making people disappear by simply, give him to Kaiban. And Kaiban were cutting them up, experimenting on them, and using parts of them to rebuild the mountain.
That's so...
So what the mountain's made out of is like, you to read it and to know that he's called John Strong.
Right.
They pretend he's some new guy. He's called John Strong. And every time he's mentioned it, it's a matter of, what the fuck is he?
Yeah.
What's he made out of? It's like he's the size and power of the mountain, but he should be dead. So it's like he's made out of all kinds of bits of other people with a dwarf's head.
That's so fucking weird and cool.
Yeah, he's sick as fuck. But saying that Kaiban, there's an entire chapter at the beginning of, I think it's The Feast for Crows, where it's a story of a guy who's a student at the Citadel.
Yeah.
And he's got the job that they've merged it with the bloody Samwell thing.
Right.
Yeah. Where this guy's got the job of cleaning out all the shit, rewriting all the books, he's doing all the crap work. And this guy wants to buy the daughter of a brothel keeper, and she wants a golden dragon for her daughter, and he's going to jack him being a maester and become a barber.
Right.
And take this woman with him. So he does a deal with Qyburn, because Qyburn wants certain books out of the Citadel.
Oh.
That are under lock and key. And this guy has to steal the keys from one of the grandmasters, who's a cripple now, who's like shitting his pants and all that sort of thing, whose job is to look after this guy. He needs to steal the key, get into the crypts, get into the vaults, and steal these certain books for Qyburn. And the price that Qyburn's willing to pay is one golden dragon. Yeah, so he can buy this whore.
Yeah.
So Qyburn has stolen the books from the Citadel with the really interesting shit in. Because the thing is, where they say, magic's long gone in Westeros, it's long gone. It's not. The maesters have covered it up in order for them to have power.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. They're the cover-up kings. But it's all hidden away. None of the living ones really know anything about magic, but one or two of them do. And the ones that do become dissident maesters, and the top dissident maester is Qyburn. He's also probably the highest skilled of them as well. But the things that he's able to do are stupid. Say, bringing the mountain back from the dead, made out of all little bits and pieces of people.
That's so much more interesting than...
Yeah. But to say this is a cracking one as well. I'll just finish up with this.
Okay.
The dwarf act. The boy gets his head cut off, and his head gets sent to Cersei, and that becomes the mountain's head. Well, this girl's left on her own. Now, this girl that's left on her own finds herself in the company of Tyrion Lannister on the run. Yeah. And then she sort of comes at him saying, "It's your fault. They thought my brother was you. I'm on my own. I'm left on my own."
Oh.
And she's like crying her eyes out, little dwarf girl. So he finds himself a dwarf companion. And then their cover becomes Tyrion then takes the role of her brother in the dog and pig jousting act. And then they get captured at sea, and they get sold into slavery, and they end up in Marine. And what happens is the marine, what they call the marine issue, whatever you want to call them, they decide that they're reopening the fighting pits, the gladiator pits.
Yeah.
They're reopening the fighting pits in honour of the new Queen of Marine, Daenerys Targaryen, who's now married to the boss of the Kings of the Harpy, And they're putting a show on for Daenerys, and part of the show is this dwarf jousting act. Yeah? But they've realised that this act gets old real quick. So their idea was, when the crowd start getting bored of the pig and dog jousting act, that's when they let the lions into the arena.
Oh, fuck.
And feed the dwarfs, the dog, and the pig to the lions, so everyone can have a right good laugh at it. And Daenerys, making sure that doesn't happen, actually precipitates the situation where the dragon finds its way into the arena, she gets on the dragon, she disappears.
Oh, fuck.
So Tyrion never actually gets to meet her in that situation. What happens with Tyrion then is he's then spurred death, being eaten off lions, and and that's funny because he's a Lannister, isn't he?
Yeah.
For a Lannister to end up getting eaten by lions, it's funny. It'd have been for a good story. He then is taken back to the people who bought him, who were, slavers. And because a situation ensues where there's a siege of Marine after that, where they basically close the gates of the city, sellsword brigades start to mount and be hired by the other slavers from Astapor and the place with the bed slaves, Junkai. Yeah. Good fucking memory. They start to hire sellsword brigades. And the sellsword brigades then, they camp out outside Marine, and Tyrion's captors all die of the plague.
Shit.
Because they say in a camp, a plague breaks out, like cholera. So they're all dropping down dead. And Tyrion had been, because he's a clever imp, he was used as kind of a fool or else an entertainer by these slavers. And he got to meet a sellsword called Big Ben Plum. And Big Ben Plum was someone who claimed to be of ancient, had some Targaryen blood in him.
Yeah.
And he'd also worked for Daenerys at one time. And because Tyrion's so clever and he knows the history of all the families of Westeros, he actually says, yeah, this guy, when he says he's got some Targaryen blood in him, he's telling the truth. Mm-hmm. So he validates the guy's story, and he starts to play him at their version of chess. They've got their own version of chess in there. It's called Kaisas, or something like that. It's their own version of chess they've got in Westeros, and he's pretty good at it. And he played him at it a few times, and then he gets to know this guy as to where he knows if he validates this guy's tall tales of being a distant relation of the Targaryens, that he'll like him.
Yeah.
Because he's in essence validating his bullshit story. So he then gets in with this sellsword, validates his stories, tells him who he really is, tells him that he's the heir to Casterly Rock and in essence the richest man in the world. And Tyrion buys himself a company of sellswords.
Holy shit, that's pretty smart.
Yeah. See, that's where the story actually lies. That's where Tyrion is. He's not the hand of the queen in the books. He's poised on the night before an invasion of Marine by 3 sellsword companies and a lot of free riders, but he is going to look to switch sides and join the Marinish defenders, join the Unsullied and Barristan Selmy, at the same time as a fleet of Ironborn are waiting to attack Marine as well while it's under siege, while two dragons are on the loose and sort of sitting on top of pyramids. And when the fire and the blood starts, them things are going to join in the battle as well.
That's fucking awesome.
So it's like the Battle of Marine that's about to kick off in what will be the earliest chapters of the next book will be the biggest battle that's ever been in any of these. The biggest battle of all time in all of history, about to kick off. But what happened in the TV show? And I feel like they didn't even go down it.
Oh man! But
that's a battle that's been at the same time as the Golden Company with the real Targaryen heir has invaded Westeros. At the same time as Jon Snow's just been stabbed in the back.
And Stannis and.
Stannis is on his way to Winterfell to fight Ramsay Bolton and his army, and the one part of the story that is actually properly intact is Arya has become one of the Faceless Men. she is in training. She has been the blind girl. She is on her way back.
Awesome. Yeah, is in the book. So is Sansa just hanging out at the Eyrie still in the books?
Mm. Yeah, she's pretending to be what's she called? Elaine.
Oh, okay.
They're calling her Elaine. What she's called Elaine? What's a bastard from the what they called? I can't remember what a bastard from the Vale's called.
Robin Arryn?
Crag, Rock, Storm.
Oh.
Yes, Storm. She's called Elaine Storm. We're being from the Vale. She's a bastard. She's pretending to be a bastard from the Vale. That side of the storyline is not very well established, other than Sansa's safe in the hands of Littlefinger.
Oh my god, they changed that so much.
Yeah, it's like in the TV show, in certain lines they ran out of story and started making it up for themselves, and in others they slowed it down.
Yeah, I will say, despite the stuff they've changed, you can still enjoy the show a lot if you don't know about the books. But if you do know about the books, I can now totally see from this conversation why the book fans are so annoyed.
It's better.
Yeah.
It's better. It's like you did such a great job of doing series 1 and 2 up until there was no chain. That why did you deviate from it? And it's a matter of, well, they want to get it done in 7 seasons, and it's a matter of, and the books are not written, so there's no end.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I started to see hack names for written by, who the fuck's Brian Cogman? Like you go from these two guys who are the two guys who are producers writing it for the screen, and one episode per season being written by George R.R. Martin, so he's able to put the narrative back on track. Because that's what he's contracted to. George R.R. Martin was contracted to write at least one episode of every series, so he wrote the pilot.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So all these things they've foreshadowed that they've not gone through with, that's a crime. That's a storytelling crime. So it's Chekhov, isn't it? He said, don't hang the sword over the fireplace in the first act if you don't intend to use it in the third. Yeah. It's foreshadowing. So when they went to great lengths like to foreshadow Tyrion's story. If there was going to be no drama with Tyrion and his father over the story about Tysha and his history of being married, why did they donate? Why did they make a 5 or 6 minute scene of a great big monologue storytelling bullshit thing with it's a drinking game, I'm a very good judge, all that crap? Why did they do it if they weren't going to use it? So that's a sin. That's a storytelling sin. You look at it and you're like, why have you done that? Why have you taken Stannis, right? Who's as close to my character personally as any character I've ever read, as to the experience he's had, right? I personally, politically, I stand for law and order in a big way. I'm like, well, if you've done something, you should be punished for it. Not your group, not your fucking race. You individually should take the rap for what you've done. That's what Stannis lives by. The good deed doesn't wash out the bad deed. You might have done good things, but you're still a murderer. You're going to hang. Yeah? That's his code. And people admire Stannis. It's always boring and he's this. No, they admire Stannis because he's hard but fair. He's a proper leader. He's a proper king. The only character in that story who is a proper worthy king is Stannis Baratheon. TV show, they have him burn his daughter.
Yeah, I was always very confused as to who Stannis was and what he wanted in the show, even though I thought he was cool. Like what I will say, all the actors I think give brilliant performances for everyone.
He does well playing him.
Yeah, he's a great choice.
He gets it. But you say he's dour. He's not dour. He's dry. He's funny. Stannis is a funny character. Some of the wisest things said in the story are things that Stannis comes out with, like fools love a fool.
Yeah.
Fools love a fool. Stannis is great, and his relationship with Davos is one of the great character dynamics in probably all the storytelling, where you've got the guy who would be king his best friend being a former smuggler. What's the relationship between Davos and Stannis?
In the show, I couldn't tell you. They just sort of.
Well, I can
Takes care of
unshroud the
daughter,
mystery for you.
I don't really remember. Sorry.
I can take care of the mystery for you, right? Davos is Stannis's hero.
Yeah.
Is his hero. One of them is a lord, and the other one is the son of a cockle picker and a smuggler. But as men, Stannis knows that Davos is the better man, and Davos is braver than he ever could be, and a hero. And Stannis being Stannis is him trying to be more like Davos.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really
Davos is one of the key. Yeah, Davos is one of the key characters in the whole play, in the whole thing. He's one of the featured characters. He's one of the characters that the reader gets to see the perspective of the story through. Davos is a great man.
Yeah, I think Davos
he's
is
a
great
common
in the
man.
show. Like his actor does a great job of playing him as well.
We say Davos of the books is well done. He's pretty much the same, but he is the Hand of the King, the Onion Knight. Everyone looks down the nose at him. But his story of his house, he's called Seaworth. Yeah. Before he was called Seaworth, he picked that name out for himself.
Oh, wow.
He was just Davos. He didn't have a name. He was a commoner. So when he's been knighted, he's then allowed to have a family name. The family name, Seaworth, which he invented, and the sigil of the onion. Because that's what he did. That's what he's famous for. He smuggled in a load of onions and salt pork and beef.
The one where he goes, what was it? I've always said, if you're a famous smuggler, you're not doing your job very well. That was a good.
Yeah, he's great. Davos is Davos is a brilliant character, but as it stands at the end, or as the story would develop, a cockle picker's son, who was on course to be the most powerful man in Westeros as the Hand of the King, Stannis Baratheon.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I say Stannis was all set to win. I tell you what I do think's funny though, right? It's never mentioned in the book that Renly is gay, right? It's just implied.
Right.
Right? Also in the book, it's only implied that Theon has had his balls cut off. It's never really mentioned.
Oh, yeah?
It's because you read Theon is a main character. He's again a character that the stories from the chapters of the stories are from Theon's perspective, and the story from inside the mind of Reek in the Reek chapters or the Theon chapters. He's so messed up that he can't even think about the fact that he's lost that thing that's not so important.
Holy shit.
He just mentions that thing that's not so important, having had I think 4 of his fingers removed, 4 of his toes, and he's been flayed in other places as well. But he's certainly out, and he's had his teeth knocked out. He's had most of his teeth knocked out of his head.
Oh fuck!
And he's had his balls cut off. But Reek, that's another story. Do you want to tell you the story of what Reek is really about? How that actually works in the books?
Yeah, sure.
Right. The Bastard of Bolton is he first enters the story, and it's spoken of when Bran is Lord of Winterfell, and a woman called Lady Hornwood comes to Bran, and she's like a widow in her 50s, and she wants a new husband. She goes to her liege lord to say, "Can you match me a new husband? My husband's died, and my sons have all been killed fighting with Robb in the south." So House Hornwood no longer has an heir. And Bran says to, what's he called? Roderick Cassell, the master that, he's master at arms. "Well, you marry her, you like her." He said, "Well, I'm an old man and I can't provide her any heirs. And I've only got daughters, so I can't marry in." So Bran doesn't really do anything about it. But what happens is Ramsay Bolton goes to see her with his army. gets guests right, invites himself in, and then forces, under, having armed men everywhere, forces her to marry him.
Right.
So Ramsay Bolton marries Lady Hornwood and then locks her in a tower to starve to death. And then when she's eventually found, she's eaten all her own hands.
The fuck?
Right? Right. So they hear about that at Winterfell and they send out Roderick Cassell and the guard at Winterfell to go and hunt down this arsehole called Ramsay Bolton. Mm-hmm. Now, Ramsay Bolton had a best friend called Reek. And they called him Reek because he was the smelliest person in the world, and no matter what he did, he couldn't stop smelling. And he was once flogged off Roose Bolton's guards. He was flogged off Roose Bolton because he drank a bottle of perfume.
I thought you were going to say because he smelled so bad.
Well, no, he stole and drank a bottle of perfume to try and get rid of the smell. So the story of Ramsay Bolton is Lord Bolton was out riding one day and he noticed that this guy who owned a local windmill, a local grain mill, had got himself a new wife. Mm-hmm. And on Bolton land, the Lord of the land maintains the right to first night, although they don't tell the Starks about it. Loads of things go on in the Boltons part of the north that if you tell the Starks about it, you're a dead man. It's like they have the enforced code of silence through fear. And he noticed that this miller had taken a young wife and he quite fancied her. So he had the miller hung and fucked his wife and then left her. And then 9 months later, a year later, she turns up at the Dreadfort with a bastard saying, "This is Roose Bolton's son." And Roose Bolton is brilliant in the books because he's like a total stone cold psychopath, but everything's just, I can do whatever I want. And he says, "I took the baby from her and I was just about to throw it in the well. And I looked into his eyes and I thought, mine own get. He is my son." He was an image of his eyes looking straight back at him. So he gave her the kid back and he gave her a bag of gold and said, "Look, raise the kid. And I'll sort you out with some money. Mm-hmm. I'll send you money along so you won't starve. I'll pay you some money. I'll give you some, like a bit of alimony, child support." So he's paying her child support, and then she complains and gets to about the age of 12, where she can't control him anymore. So he said, "You need to send somebody to sort him out." So who did he send? He got rid of Reek. He sent Reek to go and become Ramsay's friend. And then he's like, the way that Roose Bolton tells the story, it's like,
such a fucking bastard.
Yeah. It's like I don't know who corrupted who, whether Ramsay corrupted Reek or Reek corrupted Ramsay. But they became inseparable friends.
You wouldn't know,
and they become, proper. Yeah, it does. It's not even mentioned. So when he does his little scheme of basically marrying Lady Hornwood to steal her lands, he's just a dickhead. He's not thinking of the repercussions. Roderick goes out to arrest Ramsay Bolton, and they kill Reek. But Ramsay says that was Ramsay and that he's Reek. So Reek ends up in the cells. Reek ends up in the cells at Winterfell waiting for Robb to come back to take his head. So he's rotting in the dungeon. And then when Theon takes Winterfell, he goes down to the dungeons and, "Hey, who are you?" "Well, I'm wanted. I did this and I did that. I'm Reek. I'm a friend of..." So Theon befriends Reek, who's actually Ramsay. He befriends him. He lets him out. He becomes his new best mate. And then when Winterfell's under siege, because Roderick Cassell comes to take it back, he says, "Well, I've got some friends in the Boltons," Reek, Ramsay. "I've got some friends in the Boltons. Give us all the gold you've got, and I'll go and see about bringing some soldiers from the Dreadfort, and we'll come along and we'll save you. We'll reinforce you. You've only got 20 Ironborn. I'll come back with 300 men, and we'll win." So Theon lets Ramsay go, and then Ramsay does come back with soldiers from the Dreadfort, beats the little force that's besieging Winterfell, controlled by, led by Roderick Cassell, and then walks through the front door of Winterfell to greet his best mate Theon. Oh, Reek, you've saved me. And it's like, I'm not Reek, I'm Ramsay Bolton. Bang. Bang, 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 bang. Come with me. Back to the Dreadfort. Time to you to get flayed and tortured. So it's like, if you think Ramsay Bolton's a nasty piece of work in the series, he's nothing like as big a bastard as the one in the books. He's like a schoolboy compared to him.
Yeah.
It's like Ramsay Bolton is unbelievable what he's capable of with the flaying people and the raping and the biting people. It's like he's like the dirtiest, nastiest sex offender in the history of the world, where he bites chunks out of women.
What the fuck?
It's like, this guy's, Ramsay Bolton's a fucking bastard. And it'd be a matter of when he's been brought back into the fold by Roose Bolton, what did the first thing he did was? He killed all Roose's sons. There's a reason why Roose has only got the bastard left. It's because Ramsay's already killed his other sons.
Fucking hell.
He's murdering them. And Roose knows what Ramsay's like. And he's got married to the big fat Frey woman. And he's like, I know that Ramsay wants to kill me. And I know that if I have sons with my new wife, that Ramsay will kill them. So Roose uses Ramsay, knowing that Ramsay is a fucking liability, knowing that he will, in his own way, work towards Roose Bolton's goal of retaking the North, but then be able to blame him for it all. No, well, it's him, he's a bastard, obviously. He's a bastard. I mean, it's not my fault. It's him. He's out of control. I can't do anything with him. What would you have me do? Kill my own son? So Ramsay's actually a cat's paw of Roose, who knows his nature perfectly, and knows he's out of control, and knows he's a fucking liability and evil. But that allows Roose Bolton to do whatever he wants, really, and blame everything on Ramsay.
Yeah, I think.
Oh,
sorry. Go on. Hello?
Hello, I'm still here. I thought you'd broken up.
Oh, yeah, sorry, you too, I think. All I was going to say, someone else said that Roose often in the book scolds Ramsay because he is, while being a psycho, he is a bit of a fucking idiot. He's like, no one will ever trust you if you kill people who surrender to you and stuff. Your one trick that you had up your sleeve is now gone and stuff like that. Or is that true?
I've kind of your Skype on me is breaking up, so I've just not heard quite what you've just said.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh shit.
There you go. We'll have to edit the piece back together, mate.
Yeah, of course. Sorry about that.
What were you saying about Roose?
I think I heard someone else who likes talking about Game of Thrones as well, that they said in the books, Ramsay, he is a psycho. I had no idea he was that much of a fucking psycho. But Roose berates him and calls him an idiot, because he kind of is.
Yeah.
He's like, your one trick of killing people who surrender to you, who the fuck's gonna trust you anymore?
Yeah, there's elements of it where thing is with Ramsay is very, very easy to manipulate because he's a narcissist. He takes things personally. That's why he does rash things. Simple words to him are violence. He's triggered like a modern crazy leftist SJW type person.
Yeah.
You just said something violent to me. You've just raped my ears. He's that kind of guy. Yeah.
Right.
So
You've
his
just said
father,
something violent to
'cause
me.
fundamentally, what Ramsay craves is his father's validation and love and respect, although he doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
And if he had it, he wouldn't know about it. It's like people who've never had sex but are obsessed with sex. Yeah, once they get it, it's my, well, that's not all it was cracked up to be. Yeah, so it's like this, if only I had this, and then you get it, and it's like, that's not what I really thought it would be. So he's this kind of, he's being manipulated by his father in this carrot and stick kind of situation as to what you can win my respect if you. That's how he's able to manipulate him.
Yeah.
Let's say there's loads of elements of the story that are well done in a TV show, but it's a matter of the guys who've continued to adapt the story. They would have done really well to have actually read the books and not just watched the TV show in order to continue the story. Because say if you foreshadow something in the story, why not pay it off?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, why bother foreshadowing all these interesting little parts of plot when you're not even interested in using them? It's like you've got a story there that's like the Hound, right?
Yeah.
In the books, the Hound is dead, although he may not be.
Yeah.
But the Hound died, and someone stole his armor,
Oh yeah.
and then went marauding round the Riverlands as the Hound.
Shit.
The character who stole the Hound's armor was one known as Biter.
Oh, is that one of Ramsay's other friends?
No, Biter was one of the men who was locked in the cell, locked in that cell cart with Hagen Jagar.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was Biter. But Biter's not really in the story at all. Yeah, but he then masquerades as the Hound. What's the other big story that's missing that's so funny? Yeah, there's another one that's missing, right? You know, the Red Wedding?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the crime of the Red Wedding?
The Frey stab. That he gets. They betray the Starks.
They betrayed the Starks, but they also betrayed the ancient right of hospitality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. So once they'd done that, the Freys, in the eyes of the people, were seen as being cunts.
Yeah.
Right? Who didn't deserve any justice. And then there's a stage of it where Caitlin Stark had a throat cut and was thrown in the river in kind of a mock version of a Tully funeral.
Wow.
Now, her body drifts down the Trident, yeah, and is fished out of the water by Thoros of Myr and Beric Dondarrion. And they recognised who she was, and they, oh dear me, this is Lady Stark. So Thoros says the words and gives her a kiss, and Beric Dondarrion dies, and Lady Stoneheart is born.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Lady Stoneheart being the reincarnated or reanimated corpse of Caitlin Tully Stark, who's lost the power of speech because she's had a throat cut. So Lady Stoneheart then becomes the leader of the Brotherhood Without Banners.
That's completely nowhere to be found in the show.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny because you've got a situation where they start killing the Freys. You know, so they did that half-ass thing where fucking Arya, how are you going to pull that off? She steals old man Frey's face and then poisons the whole family. And then just walks out.
Someone pointed that out.
Fuck off. No. What happens in the book or what happens in the story is, you know, old man Frey's got all these children.
Yeah.
He's left with none.
Right.
Because the Brotherhood Without Banners start this game with them where they kidnap one Frey and then hold him to ransom, and then they send more Freys to go and pay the ransom and get the relative back. And then when they get there, the relative's already hanging from the fucking tree. And it's a matter of the Brotherhood Without Banners then take the gold ransom and hang them as well. And it's like, you can't do this. This is we can do whatever we want to you. You've broken the oldest rule. It's like, you don't deserve justice, so we can hang as many Freys as we like. So one by one, the Freys get eliminated by the Brotherhood Without Banners, by Thoros of Myr and Lady Stoneheart, and the Archer guy, and all them Anguy, and all these like would-be little comedians, because the Brotherhood Without Banners is a real mixture of people. It's like, the Brotherhood, they don't look at it so much, it's always seen as being, so they go to the wall and there's actually only like 3 of them left.
Yeah.
Like, no, the Brotherhood Without Banners has got like the current Lord of Starfall.
Holy shit.
Who's waiting to be knighted in order to potentially be the new Sword of the Morning, people like that.
Really?
They're all lords, yeah.
Fuck.
They're all lords and knights. The Brotherhood Without Banners are all lords and knights, and then certain highly skilled members of the sort of the local community. But they're made up of a lot of knights, a lot of free riders, a lot of actual military men are in the Brotherhood Without Banners.
There's so much still going on in the book that just isn't anywhere to be found.
Yeah, but the Brotherhood Without Banners were the group of knights sent out by Ned Stark, on behalf of Robert Baratheon, to go and bring the Mountain, working for the Lannisters, to justice. So they were the king's men.
Wow.
But because the king was killed, they were immediately, from being like the king's army, to being outlaws.
Right, yeah.
They were made outlaw because Robert Baratheon died and Joffrey took over. So the Lannisters were outlaws in the first instance, and then when the throne shifted, the Brotherhood Without Banners became outlaws. So it's like they were stuck between pillar and post. What did they do? So they took it upon themselves to defend the people of the Riverlands. And then another aspect of it is the ecosystem amongst the wild animals of the Riverlands has been changed forever and completely disrupted, because halfway through the beginning of the first book, a fucking direwolf was introduced to their ecosystem.
Oh, wow.
Nymeria, the direwolf, Arya's wolf that bit Joffrey, is in essence in control of the Riverlands.
Wow.
Because she's united all the wolves into a pack. All the wolves, because all the wolves want to mate her, and she's too powerful for them. So she, in essence, has become the de facto leader of the animals.
Whoa.
With a pack of a few thousand wolves.
Fucking 1,000?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
All the wolves in the Riverlands are all under the spell of Nymeria. She's their leader.
I heard a rumour that the Stark kids are all meant to be able to warg as well.
They're all wargs, yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
If that happens in the show where if Bran wargs that wolf pack or something, they'll... But I bet in the book it'll be fucking awesome.
No. If you've been reading the book, you'd know that there isn't just Bran who's been having them wolf dreams. Arya has wolf dreams as well.
Oh, wow.
So Arya has been living as Nymeria in her dreams since the start.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
and it's like the wolves know when another one of the wolves has died.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you notice, there's a few things that are foreshadowed. The White Wolf being Ghost. Why is he a White Wolf? Because Jon Snow's a Targaryen, and the Targaryens have got white hair.
Oh yes, of course.
So the White Wolf is a Targaryen wolf. It's like it's all foreshadowed. It's something that I love that's foreshadowed as well. You know when I mentioned this Renly not gay in the book?
Yeah.
Right. You notice that his guard are called the Rainbow Guard.
No.
Right, so he's the big gay king, and his King's Guard are the Rainbow Guard with the LGBT flag. Long before anyone came up with the notion of the LGBT flag, Renly Gay Baratheon had the Rainbow Guard with a massive 6'5" proper lesbian. As kind of it's it's like, well, yeah, you were well ahead of the game.
Is Brienne of Tarth dead in the book?
No, she's in a position as to where now she's been captured with Jamie Lannister by the Brotherhood Without Banners, and we're at the stage as to where will Lady Stoneheart execute them?
This is one thing that pisses me off in the show. I'm like, okay, like I'll buy dragons, I'll buy fucking dead wizards that live beyond a 300-foot fucking ice wall, but you're telling me that Brienne of Tarth, a 6'5" or whatever woman, could actually take out the Hound? Fuck off.
She beat Jamie Lannister hands down.
Fuck off.
Right. The thing is, right, this it's her ability, right, to fight is in the books.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of she was bigger than all the lads. And I mean, everybody knows a woman the size of a fucking cow. I know a few. Tend to be big Amazonian women who are massive, tend to be very attractive. Big, strong, muscular women. I'm like, yeah, you'll do. It's like that funny way that Tormund looks at her and he's like, in the show, he's like,
that's so funny when he goes.
You do. Well, I'm like that because I'm like 6'3" and like 18 stone. So I see a woman the size of me and I'm like, yeah.
Was the big woman with you? I want to make babies with her giant monsters.
Yeah, well, I understand the notion of that. But the thing is with her, she was trained by a really good master at arms from a young age where she wanted to be a fighter.
Yeah.
And he said to her, look, everyone you ever fight will always underestimate you as a fighter until it's too late.
That's fair.
Yeah, so you've got the psychological weapon over everyone you're ever likely to fight against because you're only ever going to fight men. And by the time they realise that you know what you're doing, they're dead. So in the first instance, they'll be laughing and chuckling a bit, thinking this isn't going to last long. And then the 1 minute they're half-arsed, she kills them. So it's like, no, it's actually worked in as to why Brienne is so dangerous because everyone takes it for granted that they'll beat her. So they're half-arsed and she kills them. And she kills them quick.
Yeah, that makes sense in the books now you put it like that. But I guess in the show you can say, well, the Hound, he was hungry and he had infected wounds and blah, blah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the way she could defeat the Hound. In the books, she never fight the Hound.
Yeah, they never actually fight.
They've never met. They've never met, although she has taken on some nasty pieces of work and won. She'd never fought the Hound in the books. In the books, the Hound is not in the story thought to be dead, left for dead, again having suffered wounds, but being bitten off that. Actually, been bitten off that biter character.
All right.
An infected bite wound kills him off.
Do him and Arya actually travel in the books?
Yeah.
Oh, they do. That was one of my favourite bits of the show.
Arya leaves him for dead.
Oh.
And then, do you know that character that they brought Ian McShane in to play?
Yes.
For one episode.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he's a brilliant character who travels with Pod and Brienne, and he's called Scepter. Is it? I can't remember his bloody surname, but he has a speech in the book.
Yeah.
Which is about his own experience of war, the War of the Five Penny Kings, that he was involved in as a soldier, and he became what they call a broken man. He said the most dangerous people in the world are in the wilderness after a war are soldiers who've deserted and gone crazy. A broken man. So you don't ever give broken man, you never feed them, you never try and help them because they become like Samaritan snares.
Yeah.
If you give them any sympathy, they will in essence kill you and rob you. So they become bandits, highwaymen, broken men. Well, he was a broken man who become a priest, and he tells a brilliant story of what led him to become the priest from being the broken man soldier.
Yeah.
He isn't in it at all, apart from they actually brought him in for one episode to be played by Ian McShane. Now he's the one who tells the story of the Hound being dead, saying that he found him and gave him the gift of mercy.
Right.
After Arya had left him. But he could be telling lies. He could have taken the Hound to get him help and be, in essence, protecting him with the story.
Yeah.
Because a hound being dead, we've only got one man's word for it as the reader, being this travelling scepter.
Mm-hmm.
And he's fucking funny as well because he for protection, he's got this huge dog,
Yeah.
right? Massive dog. And a big dog is actually more dangerous than a wolf.
Like a Tibetan Mastiff or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you want a dog if you want an animal to fight off wolves, you get a dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually where House Clegane are famous. Their father was a kennel keeper who saved the life of Tywin Lannister's father and got knighted for it. Hence House Clegane. That's why they got the 3 dogs on the banner.
Oh.
The 3 dogs that saved the life of Tywin's father.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, Titus Lannister. Yeah, that's where the Cleganes come from. But this guy's got this priest. He's got this dog, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know what his dog's called? You will never guess that. It's a terrible question to ask. But his dog is called Dog, right? And what's his reason for calling his dog Dog? Right, you'll never get it. I'm being a twat. I'm playing
in
gotcha.
case the Cleganes come after him or something?
No, it's a matter of this. He's not my dog. He's his own dog.
Aww.
He's not my dog. He's his own dog, and he just chooses to hang around with me.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair.
And he says, I call him Dog because he's not yet told me what his name is. So I call him Dog. Oh, it's really funny how it goes because it's like, as the story goes, say in the audio book, and it's like Dog becomes a character in himself because Dog is quite a charismatic dog.
That's awesome.
And it's a matter of, and Dog said. So it's very, very funny, the relationship between dog and owner, where he's not anthropomorphized his dog.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't given it a name. He hasn't anthropomorphized his dog. He just recognizes dog as a dog being his own dog who chooses to be around him. Because he feeds it, obviously.
Yeah.
And it'd be a matter of he treats his dog as a dog. Now, funnily, if you're someone who keeps dogs, if you don't anthropomorphize a dog as having a character of its own or some kind of special thing about it, the dog will respect you more for treating it like a dog as opposed to treating it like a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually the secret of being someone who's good at keeping dogs is not to think of dogs as people. Many people think of dogs as people. They're like, my dog's really clever. Like, no, it isn't. The character in your head that is your dog is what is clever. Mm-hmm. So George R.R. Martin knows that and made an hilarious joke of it.
That's such a treat for people who love dogs. I love dogs as well. I think dogs are great. They are man's best friend.
But dog is a good dog.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I wanted to ask you, are there any like minor silly things in the show that piss you off that like shouldn't, but they do, aside from what we've been talking about?
Oh, you're asking me to be a twat here and to nitpick. Ask a better question. Rephrase it.
Okay. I'll tell you mine. I think, just going back to Daenerys, like, I'm sure she's better in the book, but I just find her so arrogant. I really hope she becomes a villain and dies. I don't know what it is. I think Emilia Clarke's great. She's a great actress, but the character is just, even if she is fucking gorgeous.
I don't think she's that great an actor. I thought she was despicably poor in that Terminator movie she were in. It's like an abomination.
Oh,
Terminator Genesis there.
For what Daenerys needs to be, I think she's good at being Daenerys.
Right, Daenerys, right? Yeah. I'll tell you something about Daenerys as well. You know, I mentioned Brienne, where everyone takes her for granted and thinks she's stupid.
Yep.
Right? Daenerys plays on that. Daenerys is a very, very well-written female character in that. Yep. Her kind, if she's going to manipulate somebody, she will say, I'm only a little girl and I don't understand the ways of war. But, and it makes her really fucking sharp as to where she's got the ability to surprise people.
Yeah.
Now, in war, The ability to shock and surprise is what wins you wars, not strength of numbers, not arms. Your ability to surprise your enemy and do things that he wouldn't expect is what will make you a conqueror. Mm-hmm. And that's what Daenerys has got. Daenerys has got the ability to surprise people who underestimate her.
That's very true, yeah.
And win.
Yeah.
Now, that's the thing with, I mean, play against a women's football team, right? I've played football. I mean, I used to play football at a reasonably good level. And I've played against England international women's footballers.
Yeah. In
a tournament, we used to have 2 England international women's footballers who worked at the same place as me. And I terrorised them for an half-hour game of football and just murdered them, right?
Yeah.
But beforehand, their reputation as being, these girls played for England. Yeah?
Yeah.
There was something in that.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a mind game going on. Mm. And I'm like, I can run faster than them, stronger than them. They've got decent first touch, so I'll just nick the ball off them when they take it down. And I just did it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But that notion of they've got a bit of mystique about them. They're an unknown quantity. You'd think they were crap, but they might be decent. They turned out to be crap. But what if they weren't?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Me selling myself short in my effort would have sent me on the losing team. Mm. Right.
So you played your best. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just took my own prisoners. I just played as I played them and treated them and respected them as if they were good players and outplayed them. If I took them lightly, there's a strong likelihood that they might have surprised me. Mm-hmm. And that be a matter of, I don't make a tackle, they slip the ball through, someone scores a goal and we lose 1-0. Right? So you think of war, you think of Daenerys, and you think of that situation as to where you're playing for keeps in war.
Yeah.
So that hesitation is death.
Yeah.
That's why Daenerys, being a woman, isn't. It's billed as glorious in the show with music and great swells. But in actual fact, that's what you've got. You've got a lot of people who take a little girl for granted. Oh, well, she's just what can she know? And the fact that people don't think she knows anything means that what she does is always a surprise. Is always a shock.
That's a good
she makes decent strategic decisions based on her character. And then there's the thing, the preconception. The stories build the Targaryens as being tyrants. But why are the Targaryens kings and why were they loved? It's because the little people loved them. Why did the little people love them? Because they abolished slavery everywhere they went. So the little people love you. If the little people love you, if the general population think you're great, no one can really threaten you, because the system's in a feudal pyramid, which is what this society and this story is based upon, are reliant on the small folk working in the field. If they don't work in the field, everyone starves. Right. So it'd be a matter of that. It's Cersei Lannister is someone who believes that the little people need to be afraid and terrorized in order to guarantee their obedience. Where the Targaryen way was, if the little people love you, they'll do that little bit extra.
That's a really good point.
They say, yeah, well, that's part of what the story is. Daenerys was miseducated by her brother. And then she meets Jorah Mormont, whose character's again been conflated and mixed with other characters and stuff. She meets Jorah Mormont, and what does he give her as a wedding gift? Dragon No, that was Illyrio. That was Illyrio Mapatis who gave her dragon eggs. He gives her something even more important, being 3 books, the songs and stories of Westeros.
Oh, that was it, yeah.
Yeah. So she learns what is the oral history of Westeros. Westeros is a society that's based upon its songs and stories, because most people are illiterate and all the books are handwritten. So if you're someone who can read and write, you are in essence a magician in that society, because to know all the songs and stories of Westeros, you know its history. It's fairy tales. The whole thing's a fairy tale. And another thing to understand is, we've got our Greek archetypes and things like that, and biblical characters of strong archetypal people who will emerge in the modern world.
Of course.
Because they are the sort of the people relate to as to what they aim for that they could possibly be. Well, in Westeros, they haven't got Greek mythology. They haven't got biblical stories. They've not got ancient occult knowledge. They've got the stories of their own culture. So it could be seen that the characters of in like the Game of Thrones or Tongues of Ice and Fire are actually all in some ways reincarnations of their own ancient heroes and archetypes.
Man, that's so insightful, John, dude. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, right. Well, you've got it, but there's different religions. The three different religions. If you understand the three main religions of the Westeros Essos world, you'd understand that. Now you've got the three main religions. You've got the Andal religion. You know that do you know the notion of the? Say that's something you may not know. The title. Joffrey, king of the Rhaenyra, the Andals, and the First Men. Who were the Rhaenyra?
Is that all the religions?
No, they're the different races that make up the Westeros, that make up the Westerosi.
Okay, yeah.
The Rhaenyra are the Dornish.
Right.
They came over from the Rhine, which is like the Nile, a main river in Essos. Cities like Volantis. They come from there. And they discovered Dorne. Nymeria arrived in Dorne and then married the king of Dorne and then burned her ships and became the Dornish, the sun spear, the sun and the spear, they're like Arabs. Yeah? They're the Rhaenyra. The First Men are the Northerners, and the Andals are a race from Essos as well, who came from the other side of, if you look in relation to across the Narrow Sea, can't remember what cities they come from, to be completely honest, the Andals. But the Andals invaded from the sea what would be the Vale. And the Andals then went to war with the First Men to conquer Westeros, and then at a certain stage there's been a standoff, and then there's been a peace made. So the Andals people are like the people from the Stormlands. Think if you look at the map, the east, the Stormlands up to the Vale, right across the Riverlands, as far as the West Coast. They're the Andals. Everyone south of that are Rhaenyra, Dornish, as they call them, and then the First Men, the Northerners. So each one of those groups have got their own religion.
Yeah.
The old gods, being the weirwood trees, the understanding of the elemental nature, the nature of the kind of new agey Gaia type magical religion of the old.
Yeah, it's a bit like paganism.
Yeah, and that's where that winter is coming. Yeah, it's a fact that always proves itself true through the passage of time and the cycles. Yeah, so that's actually a legitimate religion because it always proves itself true. So to know the people, to know the land, is actually a what they call a holistic understanding of the world, a way of describing what the world is. Yeah. And then you've got the Relor, the fire god, the Lord of Light. Well, that's an understanding that's very, very similar to part of what Christianity is, even though it's sort of that old gods, their notion. Theirs is that the world is a constant struggle between day and night, which is like your your Set and Horus, night following day. light. There are in the world there are forces of light and forces of darkness, and the world is what it is: a struggle, an endless struggle between the forces of dark and light, between good and evil, that can never end, and then manifests itself in the long night. That's what they're based upon. That's the. It's a black and white, good and evil God, which is just as it's just as relevant as the old gods. And then you've got the Andal religion, which is the seven. Right. The seven-pointed star, which is that there are seven main archetypes, all aspects of God, like the mother's mercy, the father's judgment, the warrior's strength, the smith's endeavor, the crone's wisdom, the maiden's innocence, and the stranger's, well, the stranger being death.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say the seven aspects of God. Yeah. So it's a matter of these are phases and necessary parts of what makes a human being, and those be all different aspects of God.
Oh shit, man, that's amazing. So all of the religions are technically right in the world.
Yeah.
Stuff like, wow.
And they're all actually the same religion. They're just different ways of looking at it, but they have their own history of their own military orders, as do our religions.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like they're also have become over time political beasts. Where there's the Targaryens, they have Balon the Blessed. Balon's, Balon, they mentioned him, the statue of Balon, the great sept of Balon.
Yeah.
He was a Targaryen king who was a hypocrite, a religious hypocrite, who in essence merged the throne with the church.
Right.
He merged the Targaryen throne with the faith. Yeah, and it was in essence actually to destroy the power of the faith with that, the crow, the sparrow, where he brought back the faith militant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was how that movement was originally destroyed. Was that it was actually merged with the Targaryen crown, and then the Targaryen crown became the defenders of the faith. Yeah, it was a trade-off in order to get rid of this military order that was a threat to them, because the military order as a threat had the ear of the people. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you defeat the IRA as a Christian military militant sect? It's that kind of thing. Where you've had religions, you've always had military, radical, revolutionary movements that have, in essence, hidden behind the faith.
Yeah.
So that's happened in Westeros. It's not just happened in the real world. It's happened in Westeros too, because that's human nature, as opposed to being the nature intrinsic in any religion. Wow. They use it as an excuse. Yeah, yeah. All of those interlaced aspects are all encoded into A Song of Ice and Fire, as is an extremely accurate history of the nature of slavery as well.
Yeah.
Slavery. I mean, if you think of the Unsullied and the Junkai, Astapor, Marine, Slavers Bay, they'd only have been Khartoum, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. They'd have only been the slaving empires of the Middle East.
Yeah.
A slaving sort of understanding or culture that was only brought down about 200 years ago, maybe even less than that. That's a reflection of. The Slavers Bay section of the story is simply a history of the Middle East.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, George Martin, he absolutely, like, it's based on history, but the world is also very parallel to so many other events as well.
Because there's humans in it. Now, if you think of what genre Game of Thrones fits into, it's actually a science fiction fantasy.
Yeah.
Because they live on a planet where it's perpetually trapped in the Middle Ages. Why is it perpetually trapped in the Middle Ages? Because of its strange weather.
Yeah.
There's 3 years of winter, 4 years of summer, 5 years of winter. Yeah. So it's actually impossible for a civilization like that, as much as they would like to embrace something like industrialization, because the winter will destroy everything you've built.
Oh, shit. Fuck.
Yeah. The winter would destroy everything you've built. So you couldn't have an electricity grid. You couldn't have machines that require certain, what good's a diesel engine if it gets to minus 70? As soon as that block freezes to where metal becomes extremely fragile, it's gone, it's dead. So what's the point? So they're in essence trapped. In some regards, the culture of, say, Essos and Westeros is extremely advanced, but advanced in its thinking and its way of doing things, but based on technology that will withstand the winter.
Fucking hell, that just blew my mind as well.
Well, it's there, so it's a science fiction fantasy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's...
In a world where there's dragons.
Yeah, do you think another reason for the lack of technology could be because they've got access to magic as well, or do you not think that plays into it?
Well, it play into it anyway, but saying that, how do you differentiate high technology from magic? You don't. You can't. Someone would show you something one day. I mean, you go back to the Stone Age and produce your disposable clipper lighter and give it that, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're
Pyromancer!"
Yeah, you're pyromancer. You're an arsonist. You know, you're someone who can produce fire on command, and they're like, "Ah, yeah." So there's the notion of magic. Now, the thing is, the notion of magic in the modern world is a thing as to where when people become superstitious and soft-headed enough, we go back to a sort of pagan mindset as to where magic, there are things in the world like magic words.
Yeah.
Yeah? So magic words that trigger people. They're magic words. Yeah? So if you'd understood that as to where you can say things that others find violent, offensive, you've just raped my ears, what is that other than an age of magic? When people haven't got access to, it's like, someone asked me the other day about, they seem to think that gypsies, gyppos, pikeys, were Irish. And I'm like, no. Well, they've got Irish accents. I'm like, no, they're not Irish.
No.
And that accent they've got is a reflection of people who are illiterate, who don't, in essence, when they think of a word, spell it and then extrapolate it. They just play it by ear. So they use words badly and wrongly and pronounce them badly because they can't read or write. So there's all they're going on is how they've heard it and what they think the word means. Yeah? So you've got that play by ear. They're superstitious people because they can only go off what they've been told. That plays a massive part in how the society works in Game of Thrones as well.
Of course,
It's alluded to in that with that's something that's not in the book. Tywin Lannister becoming a friend of Arya Stark or having a relationship with her, and he corrects her and says, "Milord," not "my lord," "Milord." It's like law-born people are illiterate, so they don't know that "my lord" isn't in fact just one word, "Milord." Yeah, that's where patois comes from. That's where Pidgin English comes from. That's part of it too. That's actually part of the world as is built in Game of Thrones. That's recognised as well as being powerful.
Wow.
In a world where everyone's illiterate, the man who has the command of the word rules the world.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the magic of it. Yeah. It's like Samuel Tarly, early on in it, and this is in the book as well as in it, I always wanted to be a wizard. He is. To some people, to the wildlings, he is. He can gain knowledge from not having been told something, from being able to read something, some squiggles on a paper. What is that if that is not magic to people who haven't got the power of language?
Yes, that's fucking amazing insights, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it works. That's as smart as George Martin is in his writing. He's taken it all into account. He's really thought about it.
You've got to write a fantasy science fiction novel someday, John. You understand this stuff too well.
Why? Because you know something, George R. R. Martin needs to finish his work because he's better than Tolkien were.
Oh yeah,
He is. He's better than him.
I'll I'll say one thing that I thought was amazing. And I'll ask you two more questions. With George R. R. Martin, he was talking to Stephen King. I saw an interview, and he said to Stephen King, despite how amazing George is, he's like, "How do you write so many books?" And Stephen's just like, I just do it. And I like a lot of Stephen King's writing, as well. But then George R. R. Martin says, Steve, don't you ever have these days where you you sit down, you write a sentence, you stare at it, hate it, and then you hate yourself and wonder if you ever had any talent to begin with, and then you can't do it. Like a man that talented still doubts himself and has days where he can't.
Right, well, that's to do with you should actually, if you want to understand that about writers, you need to watch something that's on the internet called what's it called? It's called The Idea of the Writer by David Milch, the guy who wrote Deadwood.
I'll have to check that out.
There's a lecture series, and he talks about how he gets past that because he gets into magical thinking and self-doubt and becomes suicidally depressed, and then he turns to the heroin, right, when he's trying to write. But he's being recognised as, and once upon a time was seen as, perpetually the greatest ever American writer. And he has his doubts, and he has his magical thinking thing, and he overcomes that by not writing. And he just now, when he writes anything, he sits in a room full of trainee writers and just speaks it all, and they write it down. He just speaks it all, because when he gets to writing down behind a typewriter or a computer, he falls into magical thinking, and then he starts to destroy what he's written. Because I do that too. I'm a decent writer, but when I fall out of the spirit of it and start to doubt myself, I start to delete it down to its essence. And I could have had 1,000 words and I end up with 50.
Yeah.
And I think this 50 is profound, and then I give it someone else, and they say, "What the fuck's that?" Because everything that built that were in the other 950 words. Right? So you fall into magical thinking. If you recognise that you do that, you can't be a writer. You don't have that gift to do it. Thing is, with something that he said that I heard George R. R. Martin, when he said he was asked if he could be any character he wanted to be in Game of Thrones, he would be Tyrion Lannister. Because Tyrion Lannister is the smartest man in the world with the smartest mouth. And he says to the person who posed the question, he says, "Have you seen how witty and clever some of the things that Tyrion says are?" And he's like, "Yeah." He says, "Well, Tyrion can come up with that immediately, but it takes me sometimes 6 weeks to come up with it." Yeah. So it's a matter of if you speak well and you're actually quite witty and quippy. People who are like that, they take that for granted, but those who aren't can't do it. But if you get the ability to write it and have it read years later, it doesn't matter that it took you 6 months to come up with the line. You're still writing a very clever character, even though you're not a very clever person.
Yeah.
Because the thing is with George R. R. Martin, he's an extremely introverted person. And if you listen to his politics, when he gets to talk about that, he's naive like a child. He's a leftist, but you get he's extremely naive about what the world is and what politics is and things like that. He doesn't get the real world. But if you put him into a world of his own creation, he makes it make sense. His writing of Westeros and Essos is him trying to put the world to rights to some degree. And as a work of literature, it's absolutely fantastic and very true to life and nature. But he can't conduct himself in the world in that way. It's a country of the imagination. You have to be like an artistic savant to be able to create a world like Westeros. I mean, it's okay for me to sit and critique it and understand it, but to create it, how healthy would my mind be if it was dominated by the notion of a place that does not exist? It's like, I know quite a lot about Star Wars. right? And I know people who are absolutely obsessed with Star Wars and will get into an argument with you about Star Wars.
It's like, it's
and be furious.
Star Wars.
Exactly. It's a country of the imagination. So it's like, yeah, well,
does this go down to art appreciation? People fight about that, or
well, it's a country of the mind, right? I'll put it this way: have you ever been to New York?
No, I haven't. No.
Neither have I, but you've got a good idea in your head when somebody says New York, what New York might look like, what it might smell like, what it might feel like, based on you've seen probably every episode of a certain TV show that's been set there.
It's very true.
So you understand the notion of New York, but you've never been, so it is in essence a country of the imagination.
Shit, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, so in that respect, so is King's Landing, so is The Wall, so is Volantis, so is Marine.
Yeah.
There's no difference to the way that you process the information, is there? Because you've never been to one place, you've never been to another. So if you hear a historical story of something that happened in, say, New York 100 years ago, what's the difference between that and something that never happened in a world that's not real?
Gee,
none.
Fuck.
So you process that information in exactly the same way. Stories are stories. You have to remember that once upon a time we were, and it's not so long ago in human experience, you probably would never have travelled more than 20 miles from your own home.
Yeah, it's true.
And if you had, you'd have been someone who went on some great adventure. But it might have taken you 6 weeks to get to London.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you think of it in that regard as to where these countries of the imagination, these places further than the eye can see, is in essence what in the old days would be magic. And magic is in essence storytelling. It's what we're based upon. How well you know someone is generally a reflection on how well you can tell their story. We are linguistic beasts. Without our language, we're not human. And we process everything in that regard. As to where, a certain word, like car, it's a 3-letter word, but it's a hyperlink to every car that was ever invented. The technology associated with it, the laws that govern it, how it works mechanically is all hyperlinked to that word and association. So I say Westeros, and it's again a hyperlink to every element of this imaginary world.
Yeah, wow. So that brought me on to another question I was going to ask you. I've noticed that it's a very realistically portrayed medieval world where they thought differently and everything. And what I've noticed is we do banter about and make fun of, lefties who we find a bit extreme and stuff. But what I've noticed is a lot of people you think really wouldn't like Game of Thrones at all seem to love it, despite all that. Do you think it's linked to what we were just talking about? No?
No, it's not. Because it's derivative. It's a derivative of human. Yeah, human. We're a species, one species. We're talking about races. We're one species that fundamentally all function in the same way. And if it's a work made by humans, it's made for humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a story written by. As long as a human wrote the story, it's derivative, and everyone can relate to it. Because it's a species. We're one species, aren't we?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of that, the act of imagination. That's in essence that's actually it's a powerful religious notion, that from the old world as well. Our ability to go out in spirit is my ability to tell you a story and you to be able to understand it and retell the same story.
That's very true. Yeah.
As to where I can tell you it and you can imagine it or picture it or make the connection. That's actually the notion as to how the spirit is understood, as to how you preach a kind of religion or create a set of values. Yeah, I mean you could say, well, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I am going to live forever now by Westerosi law. Yeah, and it'd be That's quite, that's decent. At least it's a code. It's a system that can be related to, because even though it's fiction, it's derivative of human experience.
And that's why you think people who normally aren't even into fantasy as well seem to love Game of Thrones as well.
That's because it's a drama. It's a human melodrama. And it's a matter of drama. If there wasn't people in the world that were a little bit histrionic, what if, fear of, drama seeking, get bored, want to start some shit to get some attention. If there weren't people in the world like that, there wouldn't be any stories. And there'd be no need to entertain anyone.
Yeah.
So there'd be no need to tell stories. So it's a matter of that. It's part of what it is to be human, to be someone who can entertain a story. It's an act of, and as well as that, any creative endeavor by way of fiction is an act of faith that someone else will understand what you're trying to say. Every time you open your mouth, it's an act of faith. Let's say we increasingly live in a world where people are afraid to open their mouths and walk on eggshells because they may say something that might offend someone, right? So what is the remedy for that? You write a story. You can get away with writing a story about anything and it not be taken seriously because it's within the confines of fiction. But if you were to say that in real life, people would want you dead.
Yeah, you've got a good
I mean,
point.
I have a wind up of people where I've weighed up. You can tell someone anything as long as you pretext what you say with, I've got an idea for a television series.
Yeah.
Right? So you say, hey, I've got an idea for a TV series. Like what? He says, you're in it. And some stranger comes along out of the blue and sort of drags you out of the pub, kicks you all over the street, and then drowns you in the river. And that's the end. And they're like, what are you trying to say? Well, it's just an idea for a TV show I've had. So it's a matter of, as soon as you say those words, it kind of opens up a new window in your mind as to say, well, this is a blank canvas now. I have to engage in this story. Yeah?
Yeah.
It's like a joke. Telling a joke is exactly that as well. So how do you make it obvious that you're telling a joke? Your first line of the joke is absurd.
Yeah.
2 penguins stood on a rock. One says to the other, it's like, hey, penguins can't talk. It's a joke. But if you don't understand that penguins can't talk, it's a matter of, So it's a matter of you telegraph the notion of this is a story. So you buy into that when you sit down in a chair and press the play on the video machine or the DVD machine as to say, I'm watching this. You voluntarily engage in an act of faith and imagination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the storytelling thing. Game of Thrones, just if you'd say, well, it must be wrapping up time now. We've been on it for a couple of hours.
Absolutely.
But Game of Thrones, it's special in its storytelling method as to where it's very similar to Peep Show. Have you ever seen a TV show, Peep Show?
Little bits. I was quite young when it aired.
Right. Peep Show is a sitcom where the viewer can hear what the characters are thinking. Mm-hmm. Now, that's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible, but it's only made possible by the advent of television and people's ability to imaginatively engage. So you can have 2 characters on the screen having a conversation and have voices in the background being the voices in their head saying what they're really thinking at the same time as there being a dialogue between the 2 people. Yeah. So that notion is science fiction. Whereas Game of Thrones is written is chapter to chapter written from the perspective of a certain character in a certain situation, and it drives the narrative like that. So the only person, mentioned it earlier, the only person in this universe who understands what's going on at all places at once is you. And you are absolutely crucial to the story. Because if you weren't reading the book, it'd be dead words in a book. But when you bring it to life, you bring the whole world to life because you know more than every character in the story.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
That's genius.
Yeah.
That is genius. And I think Martin's likely one of the first people who's played that and got away with it. Because if you think of writing a book or a story, that's the thing that always, by way of writing stories, the thing that always trips me up is, from whose perspective am I writing this tale? Is it like Moby Dick and I'm Ishmael telling the story because I'm the one who got away? Or am I some kind of omniscient God who can see everything and knows everything and can see what everyone can think and sees and actually sees the dialogue play out? So from whose perspective do I tell this story from? Is a big question when it comes to telling a story, for it to be dramatic.
Yeah.
George R.R. Martin sustained the best way of doing it was a patchwork quilt of telling different angles of the story from different perspectives that meet.
Yeah, so it's not written in the first person, but it's written in the...
It's written in the first person by many different people.
Yeah. But it's not, they don't say, I went to the, it's, John said, but then he thought, but he has no idea what Tyrion is thinking. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it works like that. So it's a matter of, you're the only person who knows the bigger story behind the story, which is what makes the story unfold, is you. And you've learned the story because you've overheard. You know this power that Bran's got? Where he can go back in time and listen in. That's you.
Yeah.
Bran's you in the story. Bran gets in the end gets to see the world from your perspective. Now, if you see the opening credit of Game of Thrones, it's not noticed very much. But you see this map and you see this sun swirling round and travelling. That's you.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, that's you. That's you investing in this.
One last
This is
question.
your perspective. This is your view of what's going on, and it's a controlled narrative, but you're the guy who's in charge. There would be no Game of Thrones if you never watched it.
It's true, yeah, man. Okay, so on the show, who's the most gorgeous girl?
What actor sort of character?
Yeah, on the show.
Oh, well, that's just personal preference, isn't it? As to best looking.
Yeah, who do you think's the prettiest girl on it?
Who's the prettiest girl on it? I liked the Sand Snake girl, who's actually the proper daughter of Ilya Sand.
Yeah.
The one who expresses an interest in Bronn.
Yeah, that one who shows the boobies through the bar.
She was pretty.
Yeah.
She were very pretty. That's something as well I've mentioned to you before, is the story of Bronn. Before we go, we'll tell the story of Bronn. Bronn was written out of the story in the books, written out, gone, when he refused to fight the Mountain for Tyrion. He says the same things actually as the Red Viper says. He says, well, he's a big slow lad, but I'm quicker than him and I could possibly beat him, but I only have to make one mistake and he'll cut me in half. I'm not fighting against him. I'll have to be stupid. There's not enough money in the world for me to be dead. So I am not fighting him. And then it's written in the book as to say, and they parted companies and they never saw each other ever again.
Shit.
Finally gone. But what happens is, do you know that scene where Sansa was grabbed by that mob and almost raped?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, Wallace, what's her name? I can't think of her fucking surname now. Well, a highborn girl called Alice, who was seen as being a bit of a slowy. She was captured by them and they did all rape her, and she became pregnant with a bastard. Now, this girl, her family had been trying to marry her off to some High Lord for years and wanted to marry her off to Tyrion. And when she became soiled and had a bastard, part of the price for actually buying off Bronn so he wouldn't help Tyrion fight the Mountain was that Cersei arranged a marriage to this young Lois for Bronn. Okay. So she was carrying a bastard that wasn't his, and he got married into her family, and she was like second daughter in line. She was the second child. She had an older sister. Can't remember the surname, so you have to look up. But what happened was, Bronn's like, he's talking to Tyrion. He's like, well, she's carrying that bastard. He's like, yeah. And as soon as she's dropped it, I'll stick one of my own in her. And I'll be on my way to having my own great house. Mm-hmm. So what happens is they have the baby, and then Bronn and Lois present it to the Queen and say, we want to call him Tyrion. Tyrion the bastard. And Cersei said, no, that's not allowed. And he goes back, and then the husband of the firstborn daughter and the firstborn daughter was accidentally killed on a hunt.
Oh,
right, dead. And then the wife, the wife of the guy accidentally killed, went to see Cersei and said, "Who's been killed? It's a matter of we think that Bronn's done it." So Cersei then approaches one of her friends to say, "Go and sort him out, that brigand." So this idiot comes along and challenges Bronn to a duel. So they go for it with swords and lance, and Bronn knocks him off his arse and cuts his head off.
Yeah.
And then Cersei's like, well, I wanted you to just depose him. I didn't tell you to duel him. I didn't tell you to challenge him. I didn't tell you to throw the gauntlet down. So this crazy first sister, Cersei, decides, get rid of her. So she just gives him to Qyburn, and he cuts her up and uses her as spare parts for the mountain. God. And then puts Bronn in charge of a great house. Because he then sees that the old father dies, and then he starts to hire sellswords. Yeah. And because, in essence, it becomes the House of Bronn. He takes over. What's the name of the family he takes over? But he takes over the castle. You know, it's like in the series where I want a castle. Well, he gets his own castle by working his way as a cutthroat into the company of good people.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't shift him. He's took over. He's now, in his own right, a lord. Because you can't stop him. And even though he hasn't got the loyalty of the people, he's got the loyalty of all his sellsword mates who he's hired to be his guards. So he becomes a rogue house in his own right. But the thing is, if you understand how Westeros works, there's very few houses that weren't created in that regard in the first place.
Yeah.
Someone always took something that was not theirs. So the best example of this is the Lannisters. You understand that? Have you heard the history of the Lannisters? The Lannisters were not a great house. It's a matter of a man called Lann the Clever actually did what it's foreshadowed in the show as to where Tyrion knows how to smuggle people into Casterly Rock. He was a man who smuggled himself into Casterly Rock and, being very clever, managed to con the Lord of Casterly Rock into basically handing over Casterly Rock to him. He was a trickster or a con man.
Yeah.
Who ended up the head of a great house. And then you've got Lannister, Lannis Poet. They're all descendants of a man called Lann the Clever. Lann the Clever is, in many regards, very, very similar in his way to Tyrion Lannister.
Wow.
He embodies what a Lannister is, a descendant of Lann the Clever. So it's like most of these great houses were either installed by the Targaryens when the liege lords wouldn't play ball. So it's like, all right, we'll kill them and we'll have some new lords. That's the thing. So even though they say I've got right, it's a matter of no. When it comes to it, the man with the sword and the will to take something gets to keep what he takes.
Yeah.
And then they write about it after the fact, and all of a sudden a couple hundred years pass and it's completely legitimate. But every piece of land's been taken by conquest. They might say they've got the right to rule, but they fought and won the right to rule. And if you accept that, you can be someone who's moving up the ladder like Littlefinger is, like Bronn. You can move up the ladder if you understand that people take by force. If you believe this notion of the God-given right and lineage of kings and all that sort of shit, you'll never move from your station as being the lowest of the low.
Yeah, man, that's
kind of what the world is in reality as well.
Yeah.
William the Conqueror, when he took Britain, didn't have right to it. He just took it. He felt he had the right to it because it'd been promised to him by some guy. But people say a lot of things, don't they, when they're leveraged?
Yeah.
He had no right to take it, and he took it. And when he took it, it was God's will, wasn't it? Because it happened. Yeah. So he's the God. He's got, the right of kings. The right of kings is that William the Bastard was one of Europe's finest killers. It's the way that the world works.
Yeah. I think one of the things about Game of Thrones as well, though, is, it does have that brutal aspect, but I think there's a very human aspect that makes the, the bits that are funny or nice, or, like, the bits of kindness you see, make it more... It makes it all tolerable, I guess. Do you think?
Yeah, well, it shows you that there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah.
Right? You can. I could take from you by being nice to you, right? And you then think of me of being some great guy, yeah. And then eventually I could swindle you out of everything, or I could just beat you over the head and steal from you. At the end of the day, you still lost. Yeah, that is the way of the world. That's the way of reality. That's the way of war. That's the way that is power. That is the way that it works. And if the sooner you understand that as being that history and where people have ended up is generally a bloody mosaic of those who were willing to do things that others weren't, and then in essence leaving what they did to their family, who could then go on to be nice people because they could afford to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like
the way that it works.
Yeah, it wasn't so cushy in the past. Absolutely, man. Yeah, well, it's 3 minutes past midnight, and we have been being absolute nerds for hours, but I've loved it, man.
Oh well, it's all right. They say I've done hangouts like this on Game of Thrones before, but they're no longer on my channel.
I didn't know that.
So
man.
they've been taken down. Yeah, I've done a few in the past, but the last time we did one, it was when a friend of mine, Stefano, who's a big fan of Game of Thrones, was very, very disappointed as to how they killed off Stannis. So it was a good while ago.
I saw this video, this meme. I'm not sure if I told you about it, where when he's in the show, when he's staggering through, he's going and then he collapses. He's like, who are you? And then Brienne's like, by the right of Renly, the gay that you killed. And then he in the show, he goes, do your duty, or something. And then in the meme, they've like put a voice clip over it where she goes, have you any last words? Speak them now. He goes, bend the knee or die. And then shoots lasers out of his eyes or some shit.
Yeah, that's just... They'll bend the knee or I'll destroy them.
Yeah, that's it.
That became a meme. That became a Donald Trump meme. There's a great meme guy on Facebook. I'm sure you're aware of him, called God Emperor Trump.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
And during the guy beat out 16 guys, didn't he? To be the everyone forgets that as to where it's epic how he beat so many people to get the nomination, and he used to keep putting up just in capital letters, "Bend the knee or be destroyed." Oh yeah, it's like that, isn't it? It's great. I mean, Stannis was saying shit like that. He was saying shit like that before he had an army. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, Stannis do for me. He's a fucking hard bastard.
Stannis is awesome in the books. Like just the way he rallied all the people and he just recovers and that's a whole conversation.
He's the only one fit to be king of the Five Kings in the war. He's the only one who'd actually be any good at it.
Yeah.
Because all he is a judge.
Yep.
Right or wrong, he's just a straight up honourable law enforcer. And he's willing to do the hard things to keep the realm safe. It's like, in some regards, if it wasn't for the big war that was coming, and as well as that, you see, the fire goddess, you know, that whole religion, they backed the player Stannis Baratheon, saying this is the guy who's fit to be king, and they didn't arrive at that through some kind of magical pokery. It's like, this is the only guy who's got any real moral fibre and values. I mean, that Ned Stark, he was a fine man, but a fucking coward when it came to doing what he had to do. That when he gets confronted by Renly Baratheon, who says, I can have 50 swords at your side in an hour. What do you suggest to do with them? Strike. The longer you take, the easier you're making it for Cersei to do exactly what we should be doing. And how right was Renly and how dead was Ned Stark?
That's a fair point, man. Yeah.
It's a matter. Well, you see, he didn't have in him what it was to rule, because he was too good. You can't always be the good and honourable. The good and honourable dies. The guy who's willing to take action is king.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. It's like if you think you can't do bad because you are what could be seen as being something a bit ruthless, because you couldn't live with your conscience after, you're already dead. It's a matter of this Game of Thrones. You either go all in, don't be half-assed, go at it with everything, or be a dead man. And that, in this story, proved itself true over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, that's given me loads to think about, and thanks for shedding the insight on the differences between the show and the book, and thanks for spending so much time with me, John.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, mate.
Yeah, no, it's
my pleasure.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll try and get that.
It beats my usual spiel about morals and religion and fanatics and social justice and white supremacy, doesn't it? all of which I oppose.
Yeah, you can find him talking about other subjects on his channel too. So if you enjoyed this, please check John out. He's got a lot to say about lots of different things, and he's got his own unique perspective on a lot of things that I find really interesting. So yeah, I'll try and get that Photoshop done, man. We'll put it in the You'll love it. I reckon you'll love it.
No worries, mate.
You take it easy. Have a good night.
Yeah. Good night, sir.
See you, dude.